My goodness. Okay, I was doing some fantastic banter there, but unfortunately I've been muted since I started. Oh goodness me! Thank you for the heads up, guys. Hey Bretta, how's it going? Nice to see you. I appreciated your comments asking where I was at. I have been, yeah, chronically busy for a little while, but I'm back. It's good to be back. Yeah, there's a few really positive developments in alt proteins, as far as I can see. Actually, let's have a look at this first. This is just so fantastic for me personally. Plant-based meat is back at Subway in the UK. You might remember it must have been this Veganuary just gone. Or I say just gone, 6 months ago. And Subway's new Veganuary 2026 release was falafel. That is unacceptable in 2026. Come on, there are already plenty of falafel sandwiches that we can find, okay? And let's be honest, for the most part, they kind of suck. To me, a falafel sandwich feels like carbs on carbs, you know? The falafel is not sufficiently different from the bread to make for an enjoyable eating experience. And as you all know, I'm a huge fan of plant-based meat. I have a ton of it, eat it all the time. It's healthier than meat. It's increasingly cheaper than meat as well. So I wonder how much that has had to do with this decision from Subway. I think that for the most part, it's likely that they did not sell well the falafel sandwich from Veganuary. I'm speculating here, but I think it's likely that that falafel sandwich did not sell well and they have gone back to plant-based meat, which is an absolute dub. W's for plant-based meat. Yeah, I hear that, Bretta. They got that plant patty, right? It's like, I put that in the same category as falafel, honestly. You know, it's kind of, I don't like the vegetable mush things. I just, it's not for me. Persons appreciate you, but you're objectively wrong here. Are you talking about falafel? I mean, don't get me wrong, good falafel, and a good falafel wrap, get a lot of hummus in there, get a lot of other stuff in there to make it a bit interesting. Can be really good. But as a Subway filling, I don't know. I feel they could do better, and they have. Subway just added a new plant-based BBQ filling to its menu. This news is actually a month old already, so that's a mark of how long I've been away. But this was on my list, and I wanted to give Subway the appreciation they deserve for this one. Subway's unveiled a new smoky vegan BBQ pulled plant protein filling for summer, bringing smoky barbecue flavors to its plant-based menu for a limited time. I mean, look at that. Doesn't that look awesome? You got the vegan cheese at Subway as well. Come on, tell me this is not better than a falafel sandwich. Be real. Let's be real. This looks like an absolute dub. I have to say, I have not yet had this. I'm going to make sure I do. It says available for a limited time. Let's. I've got to get in there. I might order one today, honestly. No! Okay, this is talking about something else. I thought it might said until 16th of June, like it's been and gone already. True, Oppenheimer, yes. Subway have been good on cage-free. At the very least, in the US, they were one of the first victories from Fast Action Network that we saw live on stream when Subway committed to a cage-free timeline. And you know, in the past, they have had really good vegan plant-based meats as well. They had the vegan meatballs, which were epic, the Beyond Meat meatballs. They also had plant-based chicken for a time in the UK, which was also really good. That must have been around 2021, 22. We were really spoiled for choice in Subway in the UK. It very much became one of my go-tos alongside Greg's. So we were really spoiled for choice, but then since then, they got rid of plant-based meat, and I have not been there since. I'm not getting the vegetable mush, not for me. The new option features plant-based protein coated in a smoky and sweet barbecue sauce, offering a meat-free alternative for customers looking to enjoy classic barbecue flavors during the summer months. The BBQ plant protein can be ordered as a foot-long or 6-inch sub, wrap, salad, or jacket potato through Subway's Spudway range. There you go. Giving customers a variety of ways to enjoy the new filling. Subway do baked potatoes now, hey? Game's gone mad. To mark the arrival of the new filling, Subway rewards members up until 16th of June. So, available at participating Subway restaurants across the UK, as well as the Subway app, selected delivery platforms. Launch ads. I wonder if they're going to say anything about the success of their previous vegan options. Launch adds Subway's existing plant-based offering and provides another convenient option for customers looking to reduce their meat consumption without sacrificing flavour. Subway first entered the vegan market in 2019 with the launch of its plant patty, before introducing a series of meat-free products including the meatless meatball marinara, which was Don. I almost choked on a meatless meatball marinara one time. Worth it. It was totally worth it. TLC, tastes like chicken. This was also very based. Vegan double chocolate cookie and teriyaki steak sandwich. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure I had this, you know. Anyone ever have the vegan teriyaki steak sandwich at Subway? I don't think I have ever had that one. These two were very based. And double chocolate cookie, obviously, is lovely. While many of these fan favourites are no longer available, the new BBQ plant protein gives plant-based customers something new to try this summer. Look, I won't be surprised if this does very well and they keep it. It says available for a limited time. I guess these things are always contingent on how well it does. I won't be at all surprised if they keep it, or if not, go back into plant-based meats with some other product that they'll add to the menu. Because beyond this, I think they're back down to the patty, maybe the falafel. I don't know, the falafel was veganuary only. And that's it. Then you can have what they call a veggie delight, where you just have salad. So, like literally no main filling. So yeah, I mean, as long as those are the limited options at Subway, I would never eat there. But if they have this sort of thing, I absolutely would. So big fan of the plant-based meat. Big fan of it making a comeback in Subway. And, you know, I think that this is part of a broader trend of a bit of a comeback for plant-based meat. I've made a couple of reels, a couple of shorts about plant-based meat getting cheaper than meat. And I think that's pretty huge. I think that that is going to be a massive driver of these kind of changes in the future, because most people, price is the main driver of their food decisions. If they can save up to 30%, 33% on plant-based beef compared to beef in the UK, according to the Good Food Institute, most people are going to opt to do that, right? When they know about that option, and I think that that will take a little while to diffuse. It kind of relies on word of mouth to a large extent, I feel, of people hearing through friends, oh, you know, I actually had the plant-based stuff, it's a lot cheaper now and it's not too bad, to kind of be alerted to it. I wonder if there's any good channels for speeding that up. I'm thinking of Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert guy. Could he have a little blog post about plant-based meat now cheaper? You know, this is like a grocery savings hack, basically, right? There's more and more evidence coming out about this, by the way. There was a new thing by Madre Brava recently, which I'll probably make a short on. It's showing essentially the same thing that we've seen from those pro-veg studies and from the GFI stuff, the plant-based meat getting cheaper relative to meat, which is obviously huge. If lab-grown meat was readily available, would you eat it instead of plant-based meat, which is presumably healthier? I certainly would eat it to some extent. I would probably still eat plant-based meat as well. I know that a lot of vegans, kind of for various reasons, often say that they wouldn't like to eat cultivated meats, even if it has no implications for animals, right? I think some of those reasons are fine and understandable, and I can kind of almost see myself thinking it in terms of going a long time without eating meat. You get a disgust reaction, just an emotional, just you don't like, you know, the experience of eating meat anymore. And that's fine, you know, if that's your preference, that's your preference. And a lot of vegans will have that. That's totally legit. I think there are also bad reasons why vegans might say that they wouldn't eat cultivated meat or don't support cultivated meat more broadly. Some people are misinformed about the modern use of serum, right? Fetal bovine serum, which does implicate animals. Of course, in that case, it's not vegan, right? But then there's a more sort of esoteric, like vibes-based objection, which is something like, you know, you're continuing to fetishize or valorize the idea that, you know, meat is for human consumption and stuff like this, and that there's something inherently bad, even if it hasn't come from an animal, that you're, you know, validating the idea that animal meat is something to eat. That I'm not that sympathetic to. I think we've got to be pragmatic about this. I actually was asked this on a panel that I did last week or a couple of weeks ago, and I said to me it's the moral difference of me playing Grand Theft Auto and going out and killing civilians in Grand Theft Auto versus going out and killing civilians IRL, right? Now, could you say there's something kind of corrupting about playing Grand Theft Auto, and that, like, if you do that too much, it might lead you to have bad ideas that sort of translate into real-world harm? Yeah, yes, you could say that, and maybe there's a case for that, but it's not in the same moral universe as just going out and doing it, right? It's like maybe it raises the chances that somebody might do some fraction of this damage by some fraction of some percentage. But if we're in a situation where, hey, if we just develop this game Grand Theft Auto, we can have everyone who would be a serial killer go and just do that instead, then yeah, obviously that's a deal that, you know, one should take. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Oppenheim? Would you eat cultivated meat? Actually, maybe I'll do a little poll on that. Hey, I never know how to do this. Let me stop booming for a second. Here we go. Start poll. Would you eat cultivated meat, brackets, assuming no, assuming 0 animals are harmed, let's say. Shall I add a maybe? I'll add a maybe. Now, how do I actually post this? Ah, okay. Alright. Well, you're just getting yes and no, I guess, after all. Alright, poll is live. IDT, yeah, by far, generally I'd still eat plant-based meats, sure, healthier. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the health question, I think, is you have the same issues as you have with conventional meat, essentially. So that's also, yeah, that's also fair. That's something I didn't mention. Hey, VPM, how you doing? Nice to see you. I think I'm taking your advice, VPM, on the vertical stream, or I saw you doing this and it inspired me to give it a go. And we got 2 yeses and a no so far. All right, let's have a look. What else we got here? From plant-based news, nearly 75% of British shoppers incorrectly think farm chickens are no longer caged. Most British people wrongly believe that egg-laying hens are no longer caged in the UK. Yeah, I can guess what this is going to be. We've phased out battery cages. I want to say 2002, some time ago. But of course, there's still what they call enriched cages. Pardon me, what they call enriched cages, right? And that is currently what is meant to be on the chopping block in the UK in terms of policy. That's going to be outlawed. But we'll see. It's a little too late. YouTube stopped pushing it as much. Fair play, VPM. I'm too late to that party. I think this might be a better layout in general, to be fair, because I'm not covering a quarter of the screen. So I know that you guys can see everything I can see on this tab. Right, let's have a look. According to a new poll, nearly 3/4 of British shoppers incorrectly believe that farm chickens are no longer caged in the UK. Viva, a leading animal rights campaign group, hey, I worked for Viva a few years ago, conducted a poll of 2,000 members of the public earlier this month. 74% of those surveyed were unaware that enriched colony cages are still widely used in the UK. Yeah, there's a problem. That's a problem, isn't it? I mean, this sounds similar to what I am often saying about the awareness gap, or just the engagement gap, I guess. It's easy to take for granted when you are a vegan and when you're an active vegan and thinking about this stuff every day. It's easy to overestimate how much the average person is thinking about this stuff. There's a lot of people in just the pre-contemplation phase with respect to giving up meat, meaning that they've just never really given it serious thought. And equally, you know, we have been very involved in reading about and advocating for and helping to organise in some cases the cage bans in the UK. And it's very top of mind, and we know the arguments, we know the statistics, and we lobby the MPs, and then for 3/4 of people to not even know that this is something that goes on really shows where the work is for us to do. This is why, as well, I'm very, very supportive of Project Slingshot. I think that's going to be, I think that's really going to make a big difference. the tube ads, the underground ads, and the social media ads, the high production value, the clear message, the use of celebrities. I think I'll probably also do a short about what Slingshot is doing right. I think there's so many things about that campaign that make sense, and I'm really optimistic it's going to make a big difference. Just because it is, you know, when we engage with people, when we argue with people about veganism, we're seeing them at the contemplation stage. That's the stage where you have the active cognitive dissonance, the motivated reasoning, the just reaching for any argument that's going to get me to the conclusion that I want to get to. And so as vegans, that kind of becomes our mental model of how the average meat eater interacts with these issues. And if that's your model of how the average meat eater interacts, you might look at something like Slingshot and say, I'm very skeptical it's going to have any impact, because we know that all meat eaters are just doing this cognitive dissonance. They're going to come up with their excuses. And I think the mistake that we're making there is that we're extrapolating the mental model of somebody at the contemplation stage to a lot of people who are at the pre-contemplation stage. And the people at the pre-contemplation stage, some large percentage of those people just need to think about it and they'll see it quite quickly. So really awareness raising, like broad reach messaging, as in Project Slingshot with the underground campaigns, I think is really, really valuable here, because you have so many people who have just not engaged with the issues at all. You have quite a high percentage of them who will do something about it. This is one that always shocks me. I bring up this survey a lot, this VOMAD. So I think this is from 2019, but it's super relevant. But come on, can't I ignore this? Surely I can say, go there anyway. Oh, Neil. All right, well, whatever. The thing the thing that I was going to say is that that's the big survey of about 12,000, 13,000 vegans. And the proportion of those who said that they went vegan immediately, went vegan overnight, when they were exposed to the issues, I would have guessed that that would be 20%, maybe less. It was actually 50%. 50% of those vegans in that big survey said that they went vegan immediately when finding out the issues. So that's really speaking to this kind of constituency that I'm describing, where it's they, or not even understanding, but just knowledge, being prompted to think about it, really is the only barrier for some amount of people. And of course, there will be, probably most people will be doing some sort of dissonance, some sort of motivated reasoning. I think that for a lot of people, the thought process is something like, if the vegans are right, this is just too surreal, Everything that they know and is very normal, and the traditional dishes and the turkey at Thanksgiving or whatever it may be, all of that seems extremely normal and even positive and wholesome and associated with family and things like this. And the sort of worldview consequences, if vegans have it right, are enormous. And I wrote a bit about system justification theory in this respect, where you have most forms of cognitive dissonance appear to be a self-serving bias, where it's basically you want to see yourself as a good person, confronted with some sort of evidence that you might be doing bad things, you're motivated to explain that away, make excuses, right? You're motivated to come up with reasons why the conclusion is not, I have been doing something bad, I need to change my behavior, right? So that's like a self-serving bias. And then at the same time, you have this system justification theory, which you can, there's a Wikipedia page about it, and it's mostly talking about how people justify economic inequality and things like this, right? But in the case of veganism, once you accept that vegans basically have it right, that animals are sentient and can suffer, and that factory farming tons of them is not a good idea morally, the moment you take that seriously, the world looks like a nightmare. It becomes obvious that actually everyone's complicit in doing these terrible things. And I think you see people get to this kind of borderline where they can almost flip between those two views. It's possible, it's almost like seeing an optical illusion. And sometimes you can look at it long enough and then you go, oh, I can see it, yeah, and then you can kind of lose it. Sometimes you can see the other thing, right? The old lady facing away or the young lady facing towards, that sort of thing. It seems to be a similar experience sometimes when people get up to that barrier of understanding and then just don't quite have the conviction or the consistency or the framework or the social support in some cases to actually commit to taking that seriously and being, consistent with that new view. So people can get up to that borderline and be kind of have both possibilities accessible to them, like, oh, maybe it is bad that we're doing this stuff with the gas chambers. And then can just go, actually, no, it must be fine. It must be fine, right? Because everyone around me is saying it's fine. It seems to be accepted by society. It can't be that all of these people have it wrong. The animal advocates of the vegans are in a huge minority, that they must be the ones that have it wrong. I may not be able to have an understanding of why exactly, but the signals are telling me that the majority position is the correct one. And if I'm in a position where I kind of want to believe that anyway, this is frankly further than most people will get to thinking about it, unless they're constantly prompted to do so. And that's the other thing I like about Slingshot. I'm really going off on one here, by the way. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this article in a moment. That's the other thing I like about Slingshot. They are a long-term campaign. They're doing it for a number of months, where people who commute on these tube lines are going to see that every day, day in, day out. They will not be able to look away from that optical illusion. And I think that will really increase the proportion of those people who are now locked in, see the reality, and sort of can't unsee it, right? Right. Anyway. We got 2/3 of people saying yes to eating cultivated meat so far, assuming 0 animals are harmed. 1/3 saying no, they wouldn't eat it. Well, that's pretty woke, guys. I appreciate that. And perhaps I shouldn't be surprised for people in my chat to be, pretty pro-cultivated meat. I might have guessed lower. In general, vegans do have a lower acceptance rate for cultivated meat than meat eaters. And when I say acceptance, I mean willingness to eat, personally. And that's understandable, and I think also not really a problem, right? Because we're only really interested in displacing. But yeah, woke vegans in the Vegan 2.0 chat. Shock. Shock, said no one. Evocatus, I think that you are overstating that a little bit. I think it's a little bit lower than that. But the reasons for that are also explored in the same report that you're referencing, so I'm sure you can have a look there. According to Viva, many consumers believe that the 2012 EU-wide ban on traditional battery cages eradicated the practice entirely. That's exactly what I said, hey? But many old-fashioned factory farming systems were simply replaced by so-called enriched cages. A single enriched colony cage can hold up to 80 birds, and under current guidelines, each animal is given a usable space smaller than an A4 piece of paper. Yeah, so this is exactly as I predicted. It was 2012, not 2002. And that was actually an EU ban on battery cages, which of course affected the UK, and we have maintained. Now, the EU is overdue with phasing out cages entirely, as is the UK at this point. And yeah, this is still, look, this is some progress. It's better than having battery cages, but the cages that are still widely used, they ain't that great for the birds either, right? A single colony cage up to 80 birds, and each animal is given a usable space smaller than an A4 piece of paper. We've seen the stacks of colony cages in these egg operations. I guess I didn't have a guess as to how many per cage, but each one having the space the size of an A4 piece of paper. We've used that one before. I think that's a very good visual. How long before kids won't know what A4 paper is? We'll have to say it's the size of 4 iPhones. Approximately 7.3 million egg-laying hens are trapped inside enriched colony cages at any one time. These animals produce 17% of the UK's eggs, while unable to see natural light, perform natural behaviours, or stretch their wings. I will say we're pleased that that's a low percentage, right? We saw the sort of flip side of this number recently celebrated, with the UK getting up to 83% cage-free now. There's a couple of countries that are even better. We always look at the Harward data, right? They've added to this graph, my favourite graph, they've added 3 countries. And we've got to say shout-outs to Germany and Austria here. Germany reaching very close to 100% cage-free as of 2025. And do they have a target to meet it by the end of 2025? I wouldn't be surprised if that is 100%. Now, it seems weird that it would be 0.7% are still in cages. So this is, you know, what the last of the phasing out looks like. Germany back in 2011 was at 86% cage-free. The UK just now in 2025 is getting up to 83%. So we are, you know, probably entering this last phase-out period in the UK. And Austria, shout out to Austria, that have been 100% cage-free since 2020. So they're mogging everyone, really. I will say it's nice to be beating America on this. Don't you think? I mean, that's a silly instinct in some ways, because of course we want all of these to go to 100%. But there's something about me that can't help being proud. We're, you know, nearly twice the level of the Americans. That said, it looks like they're increasing at a faster rate than us. So yeah, the UK still currently considering legislation to ban cages for egg-laying hens. But it's not a done deal yet, and of course there are players in the egg industry who are lobbying against this. That is just one of my favourite things to think about. Favourite things to think about is a weird way of putting it, but I'm fascinated by the existence of people who professionally and knowingly lie and mislead with the aim of keeping animals in worse conditions. Like, that really fascinates me. I was reading about the National Pork Producers Council in the US and how they have been really the main lobbyists for the so-called Save Our Bacon Act, which, as far as I can tell, is still kind of a live issue. Like, there was some votes against it, enough votes against it or resistance to it. I need to read some more of the details about this, obviously. But in this saga, you have obviously the animal groups encouraging people to write to their representatives and campaign for protecting California and other states' rights to set animal welfare standards for products sold in their state. And you have the National Pork Producers Council lobbying directly against that to say that the federal rules overrule any state rules and that essentially the California government is not allowed to insist on cage-free eggs or on banning the use of crates in pork farming, right? And I just wonder what kind of internal monologue these people must have. There's this guy, Rob Brenneman is the name of the head of the National Pork Producers Council. And I just wonder about somebody who does that role. He must be in a deep, deep state of dissonance with respect to animal suffering and must be really quite sensitive to thinking about that the wrong way. If he looks at that optical illusion for too long and sees the young woman, he might go insane. And I've had this in my interactions with meat industry people. Bold of you to assume the animal ag lobbyists have anything going on in their head at all. Yeah, I mean, kind of, right? Maybe it's a bit of projection that they have any kind of moral concerns or are capable of it, right? But I've had this with some of the animal ag people that I've interacted with. The best example was Paul Wood in that debate saying that most animals don't suffer on factory farms. I think, what kind of software must you be running to be able to say that with a straight face? And the other one was Todd Thurman, who was that pork industry consultant that I debated about the veganism and IQ. And he requested on email that I didn't take the conversation to anything to do with animal ethics. And it was a condition of the conversation, and, I agreed to that, and I respected that in the conversation. I think it's, one has to do that if you want to be able to have future conversations. But it does feel a bit grubby to not have brought it up, frankly. And I mean, the thing I was struck by that guy, I don't know what he looks like normally, to be fair, but when he came onto the call, he looked close to tears from the first moment. I don't know if he thought I was going to force him to confront this thing that he didn't want to. I mean, you know, it's a bit fair enough, I guess, being nervous to doing a live debate for the first time and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that guy I looked into his eyes and I saw a man who had spent his life arguing for more knives in the throats of pigs. Like there was a deadness there. Anyway, we're going to be doing good news. The stream title's very misleading at the moment. I've been very sober, very somber. But let's get this. This is actually a little bit of the bad news that we're going to cover, and then there's more good stuff coming. Right, Kate Robertson, Viva's campaigns manager, said, "We asked 2,000 members of the public a simple question, and in doing so we've highlighted a deeply worrying disconnect between what consumers believe to be true and the realities of animal farming. Viva conducted the new poll as part of its Cracked campaign, which aims to raise awareness of caged hens. The campaign also intends to maintain pressure on the government to follow through on its commitment to phase out enriched colony cages, following extensive industry lobbying and a delayed public consultation." Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So this is, I mean, we had a thing on the channel. We were writing to MPs about this, or doing the it wasn't writing to MPs. It was doing the consultation, right? So a few people in chat will have done this consultation as well. Hey, Smoke Mirrors, nice to see you. Hey, Jake Lagatar, nice to see you. But yeah, extensive industry lobbying and delayed public consultation. I mean, the one thing that gives me a bit of hope on the lobbying side here, because cage-free is already up to 83% in the UK, that 83%, their interests become to lobby in favour of outlawing cages, right? They've already made the investments, they've already got the facilities that are compliant and are cage-free. And it makes sense from a business perspective for them to want that to be the barrier to entry, right, and the minimal level. Because at the moment, they're getting undercut by the 17% who are still using cages. So that's not good from their perspective. So that gives me a bit of hope. And you've seen that operationalized because a lot of the big retailers, the supermarkets, wrote to the government and asked, you know, in support of the cage ban. I know that several supermarkets are already 100% cage-free in their egg supply. And so, again, it becomes in their interests to say, you know, we want this to be the standard. We want this to be the legal minimum. We're already doing this. And, you know, we don't want to be undercut by people who are doing it worse. And at the moment, that's allowed. So I'm optimistic about that. We'll see. We'll see. Time will tell on the UK government phasing out cages. Look, we're getting a new Prime Minister now. It actually be kind of interesting to see what Andy Burnham has said about vegan adjacent things. Politicians are often very coy about commenting on animal issues because they know it can be weaponized in some cases, and especially left-leaning politicians, you have to be extra careful in a way because it's all too easy to paint you as a vegan. And then, right, that's unfortunate, but that's how it is in politics. That's enough to turn some people away from you, frankly. So even the animal-supportive politicians, who typically are more so on the left, will often be quite careful about, you know, advertising that or playing that role to such a full extent. I mean, Keir Starmer was a vegetarian, right? But of course, it'd be completely politically not feasible for him to be saying everyone needs to be a vegetarian, right? Like that's the quickest way to lose an election at the moment. Our yearly prime minister change, yeah, true. Do you see Zach Polanski endorse Slingshot? Yes, I did see that. That is very based, actually. That is very, very based. And Zach Polanski, of course, vegan. Yeah, he did that video with them. Hey, I think that's awesome. Zach Polanski's hard not to like, isn't he? He's a good lad. He's very much got the cultural momentum in many ways, and it's really good to see him speaking up in support of Slingshot. While most British people may be unaware that enriched colony cages exist, 94% of those who are aware believe it is unacceptable. Hey, this is Brian Research. There you go. This is our research on how the acceptability of various animal farming practices. And look, this combines it with prevalence as well, so you get the most disapproved of practices, which, by the way, all of these practices that we asked about had more than 50% disapproving, right? Minimum about 75%. And then this axis here is number of animals affected. So chick culling is a big one here. 42.5 million chicks affected, and 85% agreeing that it's unacceptable. That should be a big priority issue, we're saying. Hey, Asher on YouTube. Yeah, Polanski's vegan. Yeah, he's based. Oh, look, it was the next thing. It was the read more on here. This is... Oh, is this... I thought this looked like a next story. Consumers are denied the information they need to make informed decisions. That must change. Yeah, look, this is the enriched cages. So much enrichment. What enriching life. Do you know, I really want to start just showing images of the type of stuff that I'm talking about in these conversations and saying, do you think that this is acceptable? I enjoy doing this on... I'll occasionally see Bristol Live posting like cage-free protests that are going on outside Farm Foods. I think that might be a Southwest thing, but they are not cage-free. They're still selling caged eggs, and they'll post a video of the protest, and you get all the, you know, St. George's flag profile picture, Daves and Steves and Darrens in the comment, and Liam's in the comments, and Shane's in the comments. Saying this lot of barmy ain't they got jobs? What, these mad vegans? Like, that's a so readily available archetype for them to reach for to dismiss the whole argument here. And I can't help myself. I always comment on their comments and say, like, describe the actual issue and say, do you think that this is acceptable? Do you disagree with these people? These people are here giving up their Saturday to come and protest outside this store because they think it's unacceptable to keep chickens in these kind of conditions. They're not telling you that you can't eat eggs or that you need to be vegan now. You are not being implicated at all here, and you have decided to come and slag them off, basically. So, do you disagree? Do you think that it is acceptable for chickens to be kept in these kind of conditions? Maybe you do think that, right? There will be some percentage of people who look at this and go, that looks fine, I don't care, these don't matter, like it's not for me to be concerned about. There are some people who don't have any empathy or compassion or care for others in general, right? Animals or not. I think for most socially well-adjusted, mentally healthy, normal people, you look at this and you can imagine that if you were one of these chickens in there for just 1 minute and actually sit with that and take seriously the possibility that these are sentient and can suffer, I think most people are going to say, okay, this is not ideal. We should maybe not do this. But like, there are sociopaths, there are psychopaths. That's, I find, more often used as an insult, basically, or a pejorative. But there really are, these are clinical terms that describe people who lack empathy or lack compassion to such a degree towards others. These people do exist, and so I think that that's going to be a big overlap with the 6% who did not answer that this is unacceptable on the survey. A lot of that 6% are going to be like disturbed people, frankly. So I do wonder about some of these people. I might try and do some research on this topic, like actually kind of a bit of a deep dive into the mindset and psychology of people who genuinely don't think that there's anything wrong with this from a moral perspective. Like, that is kind of fascinating, isn't it? Just such a different mind to look at that and not think that there's any kind of problem. I don't know. It's interesting. Last year, a report by the Animal Law Foundation found that pervasive misinformation about the food system affects British people's perception of meat, dairy, and eggs. Previous research found that more than half of Brits are unaware that cows must be impregnated each year in order to produce milk. Yeah, this is what I mean about like the basic lack of engagement with these ideas broadly. Like, we are thinking about this kind of stuff every day, very tuned into what's going on in animal welfare policy and campaigning broadly. What's going, like, the animal movement, we're plugged in, we know about alternative proteins, blah, blah, blah. More than half of people are unaware that cows must be impregnated in order to produce milk. That's the level of normal thinking about these kind of issues. And when I say normal thinking, I mean the extent to which most people think about this, which is to say not very much at all. I have to believe for my own sanity that the more than half of Brits who are unaware that cows must be impregnated to produce milk, I have to believe for my own sanity that most of that number would intuit it if they thought about it for a minute. Right, okay, oh yeah, women, you don't produce milk until you have a baby, right? So it makes sense. They just haven't thought about it. It's not that they would be surprised by this information. It's not that, I thought that I actively thought that wasn't the case. They've just never thought about it. So getting it, the phrase I often say on this is inviting as many people as possible to collide with this reality as frequently and as graphically as possible is really, really the valuable work to be done. Like, we just need to be inserting this into people's consciousness as much as we possibly can. I think the public awareness campaigns are so important for that. Brits consume 14.5 billion eggs a year, yet most have no idea how they're produced, Robinson said. That's no accident. The egg industry shouts about supposedly idyllic free-range farms and completely omits the hens trapped in cages. The general lack of transparency across the whole supply chain is bolstered by concerted efforts by the egg industry to obscure the facts. Consumers are denied the information they need to make informed decisions, and that must change. Yeah, I will say eggs are one of the more transparent animal products in terms of the labeling of the production systems. And I think this is why you've seen the big uptick in cage-free. Right, the reason why this has gone... this is massive progress. Look, this could easily not be the case. The reason why this has gone from 12% cage-free in 1996 to 83% cage-free in 2025 is largely because, I don't know when exactly this came in, but consumers do have reasonable information about the egg systems, the production system their eggs are coming from, more so than with other animal products. Now, they consulted on mandatory animal welfare labels for chicken and pork. And, you know, we were able to say this has been working successfully with eggs, and this is a good system that, you know, proves it works and is feasible and so on. I don't know what happened to those consultations, honestly. They seem to have not been spoken about for a while. Obviously, there was a lot of industry pushback on that idea. But, you know, I see the point that the person's making as well, because there are still, you know, each level of what the egg production systems look like is in turn kind of different from what those labels sound like. And people will have seen free range, quote unquote, free range farms where it's now just one big cage as opposed to lots of little ones. And most of the animals don't go outside still. You know, it's an improvement, but it ain't ideal still. But yes, the welfare labelings on the mandatory animal welfare labelling method of production, system of production, I think is an important thing to introduce. Because at the moment, you know, I've spoken about this before, you have the sort of hodgepodge of private labels, which are sometimes contradicting, are often confusing, are subject to perverse incentives with respect to fees. Right, you pay to have the certification, and so why does the certifier ever want to kick you off? They don't, because they'll lose money. But yeah. Wasn't there some research about how species' attitudes can correlate with, e.g., racist attitudes? Yes, absolutely, Oppenheimer. Yeah, that's correct. And I think all sorts of prejudice, I think sexism as well, and other like forms of prejudice, is this orientation towards viewing beings in a hierarchy. Is that too broad a way to put it? It's like an aversion to egalitarianism, I guess, or just not, like, no egalitarian tendencies in the way that people want to think. Also, do you think Slingshot could get David Attenborough? Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. I know that they are trying to get more and more celebrities involved with that campaign. Maybe Slingshot get Ricky Gervais. I've thought that better. Yeah, that would be a huge one, because he does do, animal advocacy. He's done Animals Asia, I want to say, with the bear bile. I see him doing those ads, which is huge for them. You know, it's fantastic that he does that kind of thing. The other one is Billie Eilish. That'd be quite cool. Hey, I mean, obviously she's not British, so I don't know if at the moment it's all British celebrities on that campaign. I'm sure they wouldn't say no to her though, right? She's a megastar. I kind of assumed that I was disproportionately exposed to Billie Eilish because she's vegan, and so I'm probably seeing more of her in the media then really correlates to her level of fame, but it's not at all. She's actually like in the top 50 artists in the world right now, which is crazy. She might maybe less than that. But yeah, she's a megastar, so it's banging that she talks about veganism a lot. I've written about half of a video on the top vegan 2.0 celebrities, and I even recorded a good deal of it, but I would need to re-record it now. I'll get around to posting that. I think that could do well, but Ricky Gervais and Billie Eilish are among them. Points for anyone who can guess the other 3 of the top 5, by the way. I could even show you the little blacked out thumbnail. Is that going to work? Maybe the thumbnail makes it too obvious, actually. What do you think? Who are these 5 vegan 2.0 celebrities? I told you 2 of them already. This is Billie Eilish. This is Ricky Gervais. Can anyone guess those others? You think there can be a legal case made against the meat industry if they're found to be promoting the carnivore diet, which is well accepted to be dangerous health messaging? Interesting question, Bandit. I think if that was a legal precedent, a lot of people would be in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I don't know. It seems to be that you can say anything on social media. That is kind of the standard. Certainly, I don't think that... I don't think there's any legal precedent for... yeah, I could be wrong about that, actually. Maybe... Yeah, if you're promoting some diet that you know to be dangerous... I mean, if there was justice in the world, that would be the case, right? Because, yeah, I've thought that before. These carnivore influencers, I expect a lot of them understand that it's a grift. I think you would have to, right? Because you're going to have people challenging you. A lot of them have done debates. A lot of the debates that we've watched, they basically concede as if they already do understand, especially the people with medical understanding, like Sean Baker, Ken Berry, Anthony Chaffee. We've watched debates with these people. They advocate for a carnivore diet, but then if they talk to a plant-based doctor, it's interesting. People don't actually want to ever lie. They'll just mislead and omit things. But if they are in a conversation with a plant-based doctor who says to them, hey, you know that there's no good evidence for this being healthy, right? And in fact, the best evidence that we have suggests that it's probably really bad for you. They basically seem to accept that. Now, they'll have sort of obfuscations to make beyond that and say, oh, well, we don't have the right type of evidence, and you know, really, if you only eat this kind of meat, it can actually be beneficial for certain types of people, right? But the most that they end up saying is, it's a shame that we don't have more evidence on carnivore diets. So they clearly are aware that there's no proper evidence of health benefits, and that the evidence we have suggests that it's going to be unhealthy. If you're aware of that and you're promoting it anyway, like, they are knocking years off the lives of their viewers. There's no doubt about it. I often think about that Matt Acton bloke who I debated, who was eating almost exclusively red meat and feeding the same diet to his young kids and didn't believe in sunscreen. Like, you can get into the wrong algorithm and completely fuck up your life. So yeah, I do think that those people should have some sort of responsibility for it. I don't dare to think that it would happen. Yes, Asher on YouTube got one. I wonder if I can black these out. Okay, maybe not. But this is Joaquin Phoenix up here. So yes, well done, Asher on YouTube. Why do lots of vegans not like Ricky Gervais? Because he doesn't pass the purity test, even though he does huge amount of work towards presenting animal suffering with charity donations, etc. Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, Ricky Gervais is sort of deliberately like a bit of a divisive or controversial character. That's sort of part of his shtick, I guess. And I say that with love. I'm a big Ricky Gervais fan personally. I can certainly see why some people don't like him, and I'm sure that he would say the same, frankly. But yeah, I think that really part of it is he just basically, as a joke, presents his character as being, very narcissistic and very self-aggrandizing and all these kind of negative traits. It's like there is a decent amount of David Brent that really does live in Ricky Gervais. He's probably like 40% Brent. But of course, if you watch him, we watched the interview they did with Ramesh Ranganathan. He's a deeply thoughtful guy. He did a philosophy degree. He obviously is vegan and cares about animals, and not only that, goes beyond and gives lots of money to animal charities and stuff like this. So yeah, I think he's based as hell. I think that a lot of the reason why some people don't like him is basically his like comedy persona, I dare say. Maybe they insulted their favourite celebrity at the Golden Globes. I don't know. Some people don't just get a sense of humour and offended by it. Yeah, I think that's right, Bretta. Ooh, no. I appreciate those guesses, Bandit PK. But no, it's at the moment we've got Billie Eilish, Ricky Gervais, Joaquin Phoenix, and we're missing these two. Oh, that's Moby. Yeah. Bandit got Moby. This is Moby. Good. And there's one more. This person here. Who's going to get him? It's not James Cromwell, no. Big old Ramesh. Yeah, Ramesh is based. I do like Ramesh a lot. I did look into Ramesh for this video. To be fair, he is not as much of an international celebrity as these people, and so these are all multi-millionaires, some of them maybe billionaires. But yeah, as far as I can tell, Ramesh hasn't done that much proactively in terms of giving to charity or doing campaigns and stuff like that. I do see him doing a bit more vegan positive comedy now, which is nice. It's easy and kind of tempting as a comedian to shit on veganism. That's going to get a laugh, and you're kind of allowed to do it if you're in the club, right? But I don't appreciate that. I think it's kind of cheap. I have seen him doing that in the past. I don't know if he does that still. But yeah, we love Ramesh. Paul McCartney, yes, Shiver of Sharks gets there. It's Paul McCartney, Joaquin Phoenix, Billie Eilish, Ricky Gervais, and Moby. There they are. That was good, guys. You got them all. But yeah, these people are all probably have saved more than 1 million animals each. Some of them comfortably. I think that Moby's contributions to vegan stuff have been ridiculous. Paul McCartney's cool because he does a lot of quite proactive lobbying and gets involved in political campaigns that take his time and attention. Joaquin Phoenix obviously did that epic Oscars speech, but is also has real grassroots bona fides as well. He rescued a cow with his wife or girlfriend. Ricky Gervais obviously gives a lot to animal charities and does. I think that's the main thing Ricky's on there for. He obviously does some work with charities and stuff like that as well. And Billie Eilish, youngest by a mile, and also kind of interestingly the only woman on my top 5. Given that the majority of vegans are women. But yeah, obviously Billie Eilish is extremely based with making all of her tours vegan, campaigning alongside that, making that Instagram post that we spoke about, right? And again, I think that's something where you got to take into account most people don't think about this at all. And they're just following Billie Eilish, not because she's vegan, but because she's a megastar. And to have that image thrust upon them will have made more than a few vegans. So yeah, all the based vegan 2.0 celebrities. And I've done most of the research and written out the script for the most part for this. So I'll put this together soon. I can kind of see this doing well as well. It's good for SEO. Anyway, what else have we got here? Seen Ramesh eat ice cream to fit in on one of those shows. True, Diane Morgan is knocking on the door of this list. She's very based indeed. Ramesh was smashing eggs without carrying the world on Taskmaster. Yeah, that's not that based. Ricky's donated over 5 million to animal charities. Yeah, I'm very impressed with Ricky Gervais donations as well. I think a lot of people are unduly skeptical when they see these big donations. A lot of people will sort of reflexively say, oh, it's a tax write-off, which, by the way, doesn't make sense. That's not how it works. You're not going to save money by getting a tax write-off on some amount donated to charity. In the very best cases, you break even. In most cases, you're still down. Or people say, oh, well, they just want to look good. They're doing it for PR. So, frankly, so what? I think it's not inconceivable that these humans actually do care about this issue that they say they care about, first of all, right? So I don't think that we can take that for granted at all. Especially when they're, like, probably losing more fans than they're gaining when like Billie Eilish posted the slaughterhouse footage on her Instagram story. I would guess that prompted a few thousand unfollows. So yeah, I think when you see these big donations, you just got to think, like, this is totally optional from this person's perspective. Ricky Gervais could have just kept that 5 million and, you know, rolled about in a bathtub full of money and said, bollocks, I don't need to try and do anything good for the world, right? I think if they are only doing it for our praise, then let us praise them, frankly. Why would we not? Why would we not? I think big donations to charity are to be praised. And that's another thing as well. I really don't... You know, there's sort of common wisdom that if you talk about your charitable donations, that's somehow bad or uncouth, or it only really counts if you do it anonymously or if you don't tell anyone about it, right? Why? That's ridiculous. Tell as many people about it as you can. Right? If you actually care about affecting the thing that is the subject of the charity that you're giving to, of course you want to publicize that you've given to that charity because you might well inspire other people to do the same. And you want to normalize the practice of giving to charity and advertise the charity that you've given to that is the thing that you care about. So, you know, give to charity and bloody brag about it and feel good about doing that. I certainly do and will continue to, and have inspired several people to join me and give them to those charities as well through doing so. So I think it's really, we got to be vocal about the things we believe in, right? Have a bit of conviction, have a bit of, if I really did believe what I say I believe, I would not be put off sharing it by some vague social stigma that maybe you did this to look good, right? Like, I'd be willing to bear some social cost for actually increasing the ends that I do care about. So if that's the choice, then, I'll take it. Yeah, if a pat on his back is all he needs, and so what? Achieves a pragmatic outcome where animal suffering is prevented. I'll pat his back and call him great. Absolutely, JJ. Absolutely. For Ricky, it's about approximately 5% of his net worth. Really? Wow. A lot higher if you think about free cash he has versus branded companies. Yeah, and I mean, that's another thing where, like, 5%, someone could look at that and say, oh, that's not very much. You kept 95%, but, like, that's of net worth. That's, like, of everything he has, of all of his assets. Am I going to give 5% of my net worth to animal charities this year? Probably not, right? Now, I do give 10% of my income, but that's obviously different from net worth. That's that's huge. 5% of everything I have is a very rich person who has spent his life, being very successful and famous. Like, that's a lot. Harriet Kemsley was in Would I Lie to You with some other proclaimed vegans. They all ate some yogurt, but she wouldn't. Ah, okay. Well based, Harriet Kemsley. Yeah, I've seen conversations. I think you could reasonably take either side of that, maybe. On the one hand, I can see, like, Tobias Lennart, for example, saying, you don't want to further the idea that veganism is incredibly, onerous or prevents you from doing lots of normal things or whatever. Like, oh, it's become relevant again. I'm vegan again. There's another thing I can't do. And so in those kind of rare situations where it's the egg and spoon race or whatever it is, like, you should just suck it up. But obviously on the other side of that, I think it's important that we act in accordance with, like, the sort of moral seriousness that the issue is owed. And you don't want to also be signaling too much the other way, like, hey, this is something I really believe in and take seriously and have as a moral position, but actually if it's a little bit convenient, I'm going to abandon it. So yeah, I can see, I mean, ultimately that kind of thing is far less than what you're eating every day. I think all these things are in proportion, right? You've got to give them the proper weight. That's why I remember Haz asked me about the feather question. If you find a feather and you think it looks nice, can you display it in your house? If you haven't caused any harm to any animal, but you're still using a piece of an animal and stuff like this. I think, like, just chill on all that. Do you know what I mean? Is how many animals is that possibly affecting compared to where the real issues are? Now, look, I can see that there could be some value in having a thought experiment that identifies, like, where the actual wrong is occurring or something like that. In terms of thinking or debating, right? In terms of actually pragmatically getting stuff done and actually helping animals and getting animals out of cages and having fewer animals slaughtered, we want to be focusing on the massive areas of agreement rather than, like, the small kind of niche areas of theoretical disagreement. And again, there's a time and a place for all of these things, right? But yeah, how's that missed me with that one? That's another thing as well, where, like, in vegan communities, it is an interesting conversation, and it is an area where there might be some interesting disagreement. What's the specific theory underlying our veganism here in whatever respect? But outside of the vegan communities, it's so like people are just eating factory farmed animals, guys. Like, don't worry too much about the feather question. We're so far from where the kind of standard is currently. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Right, let's have some good news, shall we? For once. EU pledges farmer support. You're nervous from that start. For diversification to plant-based crops in upcoming protein plan. Let's go. Europe's farmers are calling for more support to accelerate a shift towards plant-based farming and diversify their incomes, something the Agricultural Commissioner has promised as part of the protein plan. The EU has vowed to help farmers diversify their activities and grow more plants in its forthcoming protein strategy. We need to support farmers who are making EU agriculture more resilient through diversity, Christopher Hansen, the Agricultural Commissioner, stated in a keynote speech at a cross-party European Parliament event last week. The next Common Agriculture Policy, the Common Market Organisation regulation, and the soon-to-be-published protein plan will support this process. The political direction is clear, said Hansen. The event featured European farmers exploring new opportunities in the plant-based food sector and was supported by a civil society coalition calling for the EU Action Plan for Plant-Based Foods. This is similar to the UK version that we were lobbying for at the recent lobby day. To have a comprehensive strategy in support of healthy plant-based foods. We were asking MPs to enact this in the UK, and this is the equivalent in the EU. I wouldn't say direct equivalent, but a similar initiative, right? So this will contain a range of asks like support for horticulture, as well as, I don't know the details of the EU plan, but the UK one has procurement asks and things like this as well. The panelists at the event discussed findings from a new report by this group, which highlights dozens of cases of successful diversification initiatives by European farmers, as well as the barriers and opportunities for a large-scale shift. It comes nearly 2 years after the publication of the Strategic Dialogue on the Future of EU Agriculture, in which farmer lobby groups and climate activists advocated for an EU-wide action plan for plant-based foods. Last year, Hansen confirmed that the EU would create a protein diversification strategy. We got a little video here. Well, it's a 2-hour European Parliament. Maybe another time, eh? Why are we talking about diversification at all? You can blame climate change for that. Animal proteins like meat and dairy are responsible for 81 to 86% of the EU's embodied greenhouse gas emissions, and occupy 71% of its farmland, despite only supplying 32% of its calories and 64% of its protein intake. And as they exacerbate the climate crisis, this in turn affects livestock production. By diversifying towards planet-friendly plant-based agriculture, farmers can unlock an additional income stream and make the regional food system more resilient. It can also cut the EU's farm emissions by 5% by 2035. Coalition's Growing Resilience report offered a glimpse into 33 farmers across 18 EU member states who have diversified into plant-based farming, introducing crops such as soy, fava beans, oats, hemp and hazelnuts, and making products such as tofu, tempeh, pasta and dairy alternatives. Nearly 40% of farmers expanded their horizons from 2020 onwards, with 12% completely switching to plant-based farming and 42% diversifying into mixed farming with both livestock and plants. 12% completely switching to plant-based farming. This must be of this 40%, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to have a 42% here. So that's going to be more like 4 or 5% of the total. Still, that's not nothing, hey. 1 in 20 farmers switching to completely plant-based. That is not nothing. So this is a rare bit of good news, positively valenced news from the EU with respect to farming policy. The farmers interviewed in the report cite a range of motivators behind their shift: entrepreneurial curiosity, growing demand for plant-based foods, environmental benefits of new crops, and time and risk management advantages. Environmental problems, soil degradation, pollution, and biodiversity loss from decades of intensive monoculture led us toward diversification, said João Valente, a Portuguese farmer. Integrating a variety of crops and rotational livestock grazing improved nutrient cycling and reduced our reliance on external inputs. 2/3 of farmers said diversification has improved their quality of life, while 43% reported a positive economic impact from the shift. Many of the farms are still in the investment phase and hope to see a net economic benefit in the coming years. Moreover, diversification has great potential for generational renewal in Europe's farm economy. The average EU farmer is 57 years old, but over half of the interviewed farmers are under 40, and these young farmers regard diversification, new crops, plant-based food products, and experiments with direct sales as promising new opportunities. The average EU farmer is 57 years old, really? That is wild. Surely a lot of these European countries have retirement ages. Like, what's the retirement age in France? $62 and 9 months, gradually increasing to reach 64 years. So a lot of these farmers are like, the average EU farmer is less than 10 years from retirement, if they retire at normal retirement age, which they might not, especially if they're self-employed. But these younger farmers, the next generation of farmers, are much more positive towards plant-based foods and diversification broadly. What Europe's farmers want from their policymakers. This is so fantastic to see this line being driven by groups who are talking about more plant-based farming. Because there are a lot of farmers who this represents, as we're seeing here. But overwhelmingly, the narrative is allowed to be captured by factory farm lobbies. Right, Copa Cogeca is the main one in Europe, Coldiretti in Italy. These are factory farm lobbies, and they are sort of allowed to appropriate the voice of farmers to advocate against plant-based foods oftentimes. So it's really great to see those, large minority of farmers who are sympathetic to diversification and have had good experiences with it broadly being represented as well. While many farmers are interested in diversifying their production with protein crops or other plant-based products, significant barriers remain. Among the challenges cited were a lack of access to the right knowledge and resources, such as quality seeds or irrigation, producing at a profit while often already in debt, difficult access to market, a lack of local or regional value chains, and strong competition from imported and cheaper products. All farmers were in favour of the idea of an EU-wide action plan for plant-based food, in combination with national agricultural diversification strategies. They encouraged EU policymakers to update agricultural school curricula to spotlight diversification, support knowledge sharing between farmers, ensure personalised high-quality advisory support on diversification, back research and field trials for new crops, and encourage private investment from breeding companies. Interesting list of asks. That last one seemed a little out of place. There are, of course, plant breeding companies. I'm thinking of animal breeders when I read that. Further, the EU should offer investment support for on-farm processing of protein crops under the next CAP, and support for collective facilities through the CMO and the establishment of a protein crop sector. This can be facilitated through policies to improve conditions for private sector financing, as well as through expanded investments for the European Investment Bank. Ensuring a clear regulatory framework for agricultural aids with no penalties for diversification, and simplifying the rules on plant-based food processing and direct production of these products at a farm level are key measures. Plus, farmers are calling on the EU to set up sectoral programs under the CMO regulation to strengthen the plant-based value chain, prioritise local and sustainable food in public procurement, as well as improve marketing standards, origin labelling, and VAT rates for plant-based foods. Well, hell yeah, here's some sensible things. I mean, look, this is all good stuff. I'm just really locking in on the things that I know about, I guess. Improved marketing standards for plant-based foods. That sounds like it might include rolling back some other shit that the EU just passed, restricting the use of meaty terms for plant-based foods, which is going to require a lot of them to have to rebrand, and is going to cause problems for consumer understanding and so on. So, you know, perhaps this turns into reconsideration of some of those changes. And VAT rates for plant-based foods. Yeah, this one's huge. Across Europe, generally you have reduced rate VAT, or often zero rate VAT, for animal products. Your meat, your dairy, your eggs in the supermarket, they're getting charged either no VAT or a reduced rate of VAT. Because they're considered to be staple foods, they need to be affordable for consumers, right? We're not going to charge VAT on them. That's often not the case for plant-based products. So you can have a situation where plant-based meat and dairy products are being charged the regular rate of 10%, 12%, 15%, 20% VAT. And the animal products that they're there to replace are not being charged that same high rate, and are often being charged zero VAT. So that is a structural tax loophole, really, that is artificially making the price of animal products cheaper than they should be vis-a-vis plant-based products. Nevertheless, we're seeing this trend of plant-based products getting cheaper than animal products. So yeah, that would be an easy adjustment for a lot of European governments to make, like a quick win, just equalizing those VAT rates, making it a fair, level playing field for plant-based products. Why is it fair that the healthier and more environmentally sustainable option has the tax, and the less healthy, less environmentally sustainable option has no tax? That's backwards. That's the opposite of what you would want. So yes, I think there's a strong argument for that, for plant-based foods in Europe. Regulatory uncertainty makes it difficult to try new things. When the framework is unpredictable, farmers tend to stay with what is safe and proven. We need to significantly reduce bureaucracy, especially for smaller farms. This includes streamlining food safety approvals and providing clearer, more predictable regulatory frameworks, said Morten Malling Helsted, a mixed farmer from Denmark. So this is interesting as well. Yeah, I mean, streamlining food safety approvals, providing clearer, more predictable regulatory frameworks. This sounds like it's talking about novel foods, which again is a big area that I know about and work on. There's the novel foods regulation in Europe. It seems to be the most onerous in the world regulatory system for approving novel foods like cultivated meats and precision fermentation things. Like, it takes a long time to get EU approval for a novel food, and that's why there's still no cultivated meat in Europe when it is already available in the US, it's already available in Australia, it's already available in Israel, in Singapore, in a bunch of countries around the world now. And it's still looking like slow progress in the EU. So that's the novel foods regulation, and yeah, it's thought to be like the most onerous in the world of that type of regulation. There's some reason to think that the UK might do it a little better. That is also a bit in flux. The feedback from farmers reveals that the EU and its member states need to redouble their efforts to develop robust and integrated value chains for all types of local production of plant-based foods, including protein crops, the report stated. Strengthening local production of these crops will not only offer farmers resilient business models in times of climate uncertainty, but also enhance Europe's strategic autonomy. Well, there you go. This is looking good for the plant-based action plan in the EU. This group have managed to bring together EU farmers and represent those voices who are in support for more diversification to plant-based products and plant-based crops. And we'll keep an eye out for that upcoming European protein plan. Let's have a look at the chat. Chris, when do you think the tipping point will be reached where most people start transitioning to non-animal alternatives? That's the million-dollar question, Bandit PK. I am very optimistic now because of the tipping point for price. Plant-based products getting cheaper than meat is going to be huge in the next few years. We're just about seeing that, getting to that point in the UK, in Germany, in the Netherlands. And there'll be other markets following. But once plant-based meat, it gets significantly cheaper than meat from animals, and people start to know that, I really think you're going to see quite rapid shifts. So we'll see how correct that proves to be in the next few years. Like, plant-based beef really ought to be booming in the next few years in those countries that I mentioned, the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. I think that now that price threshold has been passed and is very likely going to continue to grow the plant-based discount in these cases, then I think we're going to see more and more people moving towards plant-based beef and taking up a bigger market share by volume of all beef. We'll see. I guess we'll see, right? 2030, if plant-based beef is still like 1 or 2% of the beef and alternatives market, then I'll have been proven wrong, and we'll keep pushing. We'll keep doing something. We'll come up with other ways to push this forward. But I really think you're going to see a big shift now that that price threshold has been crossed. In terms of when we'll see most people, so more than 50% of people moving away from animal products, that could still be some time. But really, I think that insofar as plant-based products continue to get cheaper, I think that will be enough to get most people there. Certainly, you've said by 2050. I would bring it forward on that. Good Food Institute research argued an optimistic forecast plant-based and other oat products replacing 60% of animal products by 2040. Yeah, I mean, it's human nature, I suppose, reach for kind of the round numbers. But yeah, 2040 I think seems more realistic than 2050. Like, think about the reverse case. Plant-based meat is cheaper than meat now, and it's healthier than meat now. And that discount is probably going to continue to grow. 33% discount if you switch to plant-based in the UK at the moment for beef. This is. How long are people going to continue paying significantly more for a less healthy product that has a bunch of other problems that people know about, climate impacts and health impacts and so on, right? How long are people going to continue paying a lot more money for a worse product? I don't think for very long. I feel like vegan food was more popular in 2019 to 2020, so it can definitely happen again and even bigger. Yeah, that's true, Oppenheimer. There was a bit of an early hype wave, you could say. Or I don't know if that's a fair way of putting it, but I think COVID disrupted that a lot. We were going in a really positive direction, sort of until the pandemic came along, as far as I can tell. But yes, you're right as well. There should be, the rate of change ought to speed up as well, because I think there's, I talk about the push and pull factors. The pull factors being alternative proteins getting cheaper, getting better. We're more and more moving to a world where people don't regard animal products as necessarily better than the plant-based products. They're kind of two versions of a similar thing. This one's now 30% cheaper. A lot of people prefer, more people prefer Impossible Burger and the taste test and all this kind of stuff, right? There's indications that we really are getting there on price and taste for the alternative. So the pull factors, I think, are really going in the right direction. And then the push factors are giving people reasons why they ought to move away from animal products. And that's where the vegan campaigning, the Project Slingshot ads, the making the environmental case well known. I mainly think about this in terms of animal suffering, and I think that is the more compelling thing for the average person. So you should also see, an increase in the prevalence of push factors, the more vegans that you have, or at least the more vegan activists that you have. So then you have the push and pull factors both going in the right direction, and eventually you'll get to a stage where there's an awful lot of messaging, like everyone knows about factory farming now. You don't have the 74% who are unaware of cages used in UK egg farming, for example. Like, everyone knows what's going on, say, if there's enough push factors. And now the pull factors, the alternatives are so good and so much cheaper. Like, the case for continuing to consume animal products kind of makes itself. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I think 2040 is... I would be surprised in 24 years if people are still, eating cows when they're much more expensive and less healthy than the alternative. But we'll see. We'll see. Ask me again in 2030, I guess. Right, let's have a look. I want to read this short piece about Peter Singer calling for resignations from the American Veterinary Medical Association. And then after this, we will watch my Varc talk, my Vegan 2.0 presentation that I did at the Vegan Animal Rights Conference, which I have not yet watched back. Obviously, I was there giving the talk, but I haven't seen it back yet, so we'll see. We'll watch that afterwards. Some of you might have seen me making the slides for that on stream, so you'll get to see it presented now. But let's read this first. This is by Stephen McCulloch, who is a vet and an advocate in the UK. Peter Singer calls for resignations as American Veterinary Medical Association backs legislation to keep pigs in gestation crates. The philosopher Peter Singer, one of the world's best-known intellectuals, has called for resignations at the AVMA, American Veterinary Medical Association. His intervention follows an open letter from the Animal Welfare Institute, which challenges the AVMA's support for the Pork Industry's Save Our Bacon Act. Gestation crates for pigs are at the heart of the controversy. These metal cages confine pregnant pigs throughout their 114-day pregnancy. They've been widely criticised by animal welfare scientists because they impose severe confinement and prevent pigs from carrying out many of their most basic natural behaviours. 114 days in a cage. Oh, it's grim, isn't it? What were you doing 4 months ago? That's such a long time. Like, there's a pig getting out of a cage like that now who was there since March. That's such a long time ago. And the American Veterinary Medical Association is in support of this practice? Okay, how has this happened? Singer's intervention and the AWI's letter are about much more than pig welfare. They raise fundamental questions about veterinary independence, transparency, and whether the AVMA is acting in the public interest or primarily in the interests of the US pork industry. American veterinarians who really care about animals need to speak up against the AVMA's misuse of the moral authority of the veterinary profession. Yeah, that's very well put by Peter Singer. Misuse of the moral authority of the veterinary profession. Like, these are people who are doing this job because they care about animals. They're going to be animal people through and through. You know, many of them find that it's unfortunate that a lot of commercial vetting is putting down people's sick dogs, right? Obviously that's going to be grim if you've specifically done this because you're an animal person. But the professional association claiming to represent American vets is in support of the gestation crates. Now, this seems like very, very feasible that they have been lobbied and or infiltrated by pork industry interests. Where you have a professional association like this, it's kind of a bottleneck, a choke point, where as the animal industry, you can look at that and say, okay, if we can persuade these few people to come out in support of this, it seems to the public and to politicians as though this represents the views of vets at large, right? And of course, most vets are not necessarily going to be tuned into this, are not going to be inclined to publicly say we disagree with this or whatever. So if you can persuade this organization, now you can really manipulate the public and the political narrative off the back of that. Why the AVMA is under fire? The controversy centers on two letters sent by the AVMA to Congress in 2024 and 2026. In both, the AVMA expressed strong support for Section 12006 of the Farm Food and National Security Act, legislation backed by the pork industry as the Save Our Bacon Act. The AVMA's letters to Congress were published on the National Pork Producers Council website rather than on the AVMA's own website. Yeah, so the American Veterinary Medical Association did not publish these on their own website. They're presumably not wanting to advertise to their members, the vets, that they have written to Congress in support of getting pigs back in gestation crates. But they are published on the National Pork Producers Council website because they do want to advertise to their members, hey, look what we got the AVMA to say. So weird that they would be showing up on the NPPC's website and not the AVMA's website, absent some sort of collusion between the two organizations. Possible, sure, but pretty unlikely, I'm going to say. If enacted, the Farm Bill legislation would override California's Proposition 12 and similar state laws protecting farmed animals. Proposition 12 restricts the sale of pork from breeding pigs confined in gestation crates, regardless of where the pigs are raised, and is one of a growing number of state laws designed to strengthen legal protections for farmed animals. Yeah, so we're talking about millions of pigs going back into crates. 10 US states have now banned the use of gestation crates, while California and Massachusetts have gone further by restricting the sale of pork produced using these systems. Right, okay, that's what you really need to do, by the way. If you just ban the use of gestation crates, but you still allow the sale of pork by using these systems, you're really just moving the problem somewhere else. right? The producers are going to say, okay, we can't use that production method in that state. We're just going to have that production method in another state and then move the pork, right? The AVMA support has attracted criticism because it places the association in direct opposition to state animal welfare laws approved through democratic processes. Proposition 12 was approved by 63% of the vote, with Massachusetts receiving 78% support. Critics argue the national veterinary body should be advocating for stronger protections for highly sentient animals, not lobbying Congress to weaken them. Yeah, absolutely. It's psychotic. You have this system where we're all kind of removed and desensitized, and through a series of misaligned incentives or distance from the process and abstraction of everything via capitalism or whatever it may be, like there's the system we have now results in this outcome of pigs in gestation crates. And there has had to be an organized campaign and people putting time and effort and resources into lobbying for states to say, you're not allowed to do this anymore, this is inhumane. And for those states, those 2 out of 50 states who have successfully managed to do this and say, okay, we don't want it done here, we are not going to have the gestation crate pork here. There has been a struggle to get that done, to protect some number of animals from this, worst form of cruelty. And the effort to undo that has involved co-opting the voice of this American Veterinary Medical Association, which is supposed to represent the veterinarians, the people who care most about animals, the people who understand animal welfare. So let's have a look. Looks like we've got the scan of the letter here. Dear Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, the American Veterinary Medical Association is the nation's leading representative of the veterinary profession, speaking for more than 111,000 veterinarians nationwide. Yeah, this is what they'll always do in these associations, right? It's like they'll have some headline figures of how many people are either members of this or just kind of implicitly, we represent all the veterinarians and this is how many there are. But they claim to be speaking for 111,000 people here. Now, have these 111,000 veterinarians all given their support for this particular piece of lobbying? You can bet that that's not the case. In fact, I would hazard to guess that if you were to survey them, you would have more than half actually opposed to this. So this is not representing the views of veterinarians, although they're claiming to do so here. They're going to provide strong support. Like, this is proactive lobbying. Someone had to decide proactively, this is what we're going to do today. This is how I'm going to spend my time as the executive vice president and chief executive officer of the American Medical Veterinary Association. I'm going to spend my time writing to Congress to try and get pigs back in crates. Like, what has to happen to result in this outcome? Informed by its members' unique scientific training and knowledge, the AVMA offers strong support for Section 12006 of the Farm Food National Security Act of 2026, which protects veterinarians' freedom and flexibility to provide the best care for farm animals. Okay, interesting framing. First of all, of course, they're heavily leaning on the scientific authority of the veterinary profession here. I already mentioned they're almost certainly not representing the views of 111,000 veterinarians nationwide. But this is telling me that it's possible that they have been sold this bill on some other provision. Like, protect veterinarians' freedom and flexibility to provide the best care for farm animals. Is this just a deadly misleading framing that we should be able to do whatever we want to animals? Provide the best care for farm animals. Is this really going to be an argument in favor of gestation crates? In a 2018 ballot initiative, California voters passed Prop 12, which prohibits sales of animal products in their state that do not comply with specific livestock housing requirements, whether those products are produced in California or elsewhere. Because no one husbandry style is appropriate for all circumstances, regulations aimed at improving animal welfare should be based upon scientific evidence and the professional judgment of veterinarians. The requirements in Prop 12 are not scientifically based and have not been objectively demonstrated to reliably and consistently improve animal welfare. Okay, interesting. So we're getting some positive claims here now. It's the position of the American Veterinary Medical Association that the animal welfare provisions, including banning gestation crates for pigs to be crated for a period of about 4 months, to be in a cage, unable to move for 4 months while pregnant. It's the AVMA's position that there's not evidence that this would improve animal welfare. Okay. Look, we can look at the evidence. I strongly suspect this is bullshit. I notice they haven't mentioned crates here. They're talking about this in quite general terms. Some people defend farrowing crates because it stops mothers from crushing piglets. What do you think of that? Yeah, I think this is the justification. This is the justification given that it will, you know, absent the crates that sometimes they roll over and they crash the piglets. I think that this is basically an innovation that allows or facilitates farming at a much larger scale. What you should have is some way of ensuring that the mothers don't crush the piglets that doesn't require keeping them in tiny cages. So yeah, and you know, we've had similar things with the caged eggs, the cage-free eggs, right? That there's some welfare measures where hens are worse off in the cage-free systems, but overall, the evidence that I've seen seems to support the view that they have better overall welfare without the cages. So yeah, I don't know. It's would that be an improvement as opposed to not having them? Like, we shouldn't be having these systems where this is a concern, frankly. In addition, allowing one state to dictate husbandry requirements to other states not only interferes with interstate commerce, but opens the door for future governance of all states by an individual state. This kind of legislation will create a patchwork of regulations that are often not scientifically based, could impact biosecurity, and would be cost prohibitive and cumbersome for veterinarians and their producer clients to navigate. Ensuring good animal health and welfare requires a veterinarian to have the freedom and authority to recommend the best course of action for each unique situation. So, AVMA, claiming to represent the nation's veterinarians, wants to maintain the possibility of getting pigs into gestation crates. Also, I wonder how much AVMA, with their close ties to the meat lobby, would be making the same arguments in the case of the states that have banned cultivated meat. Would they be saying we're concerned about a patchwork of regulations that are not scientifically based, could impact biosecurity, would be prohibitive and cumbersome for cultivated meat companies? Or would they be having a different take in that case? Veterinarians have scientific training and expertise. Again, we're going to lean on the appeal to authority that allows them to provide the best possible care for animals living in a range of housing types. This is one of those Weasley sentences that went back and forth and had comments and suggested changes. Right? There's no claim here, anywhere here, in fact, that the reintroduction of gestation crates would be a positive thing for animal welfare. Veterinarians have scientific training and expertise that allows them to provide the best possible care for animals living in a range of housing types. That doesn't mean the housing types that we're advocating for are going to be a positive thing for animal welfare. It just means that vets generally have the training that they can do the best they can across a range of housing types, right? It doesn't mean that, there's really no difference between the welfare for pigs raised with gestation crates versus without. It doesn't mean that there's any kind of claim that this improves welfare. It's a pretty nothing statement, really, if you think about it. Like, firefighters have the training and expertise that allows them to be the best possible firefighters for disasters across a range of buildings. But some fires are much worse than others. AVMA is opposed to Prop 12, which restricts veterinarians' flexibility to provide the best care possible based on animal-specific needs. We're grateful to the House Committee on Agriculture for the inclusion of Section 12006 in the Farm Food and National Security Act 2026, which provides a solution to Prop 12 and protects veterinarians' ability to maximise animal health and welfare. So this is being cast as something that would be a positive for animal welfare. I'm not seeing... This is... this reeks of... Weasley implication and lobbyist speak. Similar energy to the Dublin Declaration, where there's a lot of suggestive statements. They stop short of actually saying something that's incorrect, but they absolutely know what they're doing by implication. It was the AVMA's 2026 letter to Congress that prompted the AWI to publish its own letters to the AVMA, challenging both the substance of the AVMA's policy and the process by which it was developed. The AWI argues that supporting legislation which would weaken legal protections for pigs is inconsistent with the AVMA's own updated sow housing policy, while also questioning whether the association's members were consulted before the position was adopted. I would bet anything that they were not. Was there a formal consultation with the veterinary members of the AVMA where they did some sort of survey or some sort of sourcing of let's draw on all that expertise that we're so proud to represent? Or was this just pushed through by lobbyists and then post hoc justified and not really have any proper process for arriving at this? They also mentioned that it's inconsistent with their own sow housing policy. So I'm interested in that. I don't want to read another whole letter really, but maybe I will. Okay, that's short. Maybe I will read it. The AWA letter also asked what discussions took place between the AVMA and the National Pork Producers Council during the drafting of the letters, who was involved in those discussions, and whether supporting legislation that would regulate animals to cramped crates is consistent with the AVMA's own policies and values. Damn, okay. They are asking all the right questions. Maybe we do have to read that letter. The Animal Welfare Institute really asking the right questions, the difficult questions for the AVMA to answer. Did you actually ask your members about this? What was the process for reaching this conclusion, considering that it's contradictory with your own updated policies? Who was involved in these discussions? Was the National Pork Producers Council involved? I bet they were. Wonder if there's been any further response from AVMA on this. Peter Singer calls for resignations. Singer's intervention followed the AWI letter. In his articles, When Veterinarians Fail Animals, Singer argues the AVMA's position is astonishing because veterinarians are widely regarded as the profession that should be most committed to protecting animal welfare. Singer writes, yet in the USA, the largest and oldest national association of veterinarians is, astonishingly, supporting a proposed federal law that would wipe out state laws providing better living conditions for the animals who suffer most in our food system: factory farmed pigs, calves, and hens. That may seem hard to believe, but it's true. Scientific evidence demonstrating the severe welfare impacts of gestation crates has contributed to complete bans in the UK, Sweden, Norway, and Switzerland, while the European Union restricts their use to the first 28 days of pregnancy. In the United States, 10 states have now prohibited gestation crates, while California and Massachusetts also restricted the sale of pork produced using these systems. So I won't go and read the paper that Steve's citing here, but it's worth saying this is a direct rebuttal to AVMA's letter where they said there is no evidence suggesting better welfare for pigs in gestation crate-free systems. And whatever evidence this is going to be, if it ever loads, was enough to support legislation in the UK and a bunch of European countries restricting gestation crates. So clearly there is some compelling evidence that these are harmful for welfare that the AVMA has just chosen to ignore, which is, yeah, again, remarkable. I hope that someone does resign for this. I hope that they don't get away with this. That's the biggest abuse of the authority of the veterinary community that I can imagine. It'd be like if the head of the AVMA came out and said, "Oh, update, actually dogs love chocolate." Like, that's the level of irresponsibility that we're talking about here. It's actually much worse than that. Like, this is not reflective of the positions of most vets. You've been lobbied by Hershey's. Farm Sanctuary President Gene Bauer has written to the AVMA that the AVMA, has been a problem in the US for a long time, pointing to its opposition to Florida's 2002 ballot initiative on gestation crates, personal communication. Wow. Okay, so hey, at least they're consistent. 24 years ago, they were opposing a ban on gestation crates in Florida. The AVMA's support for gestation crates and its opposition to state reforms to ensure breeding sows have more space in group housing is therefore long-standing. Despite the AVMA's long-standing opposition to state reforms to prohibit gestation crates and mandate minimum space requirements for pregnant sows, there appears to be limited awareness of the association's lobbying of Congress on the Farm Bill. In recent months, many US-based veterinarians have communicated to me that they have no idea that the AVMA, their representative body, was lobbying Congress in support of the Save Our Bacon provisions, which would keep more sows confined in gestation crates. So, yeah, as we suspected, this is not a position that has been adopted after meaningful consultation with the members of the AVMA who are actually the vets. It's just been done without any consultation with the actual vets, but using their moral and scientific authority to make the recommendation. So that's really cool. In his article, Singer writes the critical importance of the veterinary profession in the debate to protect farmed animals. Veterinarians should be among the strongest voices against extreme confinement. They know better than most people that pigs and other farmed animals are sentient beings with physical and psychological needs. They should not be defending systems that keep animals in crates so small they cannot even turn around. Yeah, I mean, this is just like absolute facts from Peter Singer, also like total common sense if you think about actually what's happened here. Singer's view reflects what many members of the public would reasonably expect from the veterinary profession, that veterinarians should be among the strongest advocates for protecting animals from unnecessary suffering. He argues that if the AVMA's chief executive Janet Donlin supported the association's position without board approval, then she should resign. Singer further writes that if the AVMA board approved the position, then the board itself should resign. Yeah, facts. Yeah, absolutely true. This is not tenable. You can't have the Association of Veterinary Medicine taking positions that are contra the evidence on animal welfare and seemingly developed in close association with the National Pork Producers Council. It's outrageous. If they don't provide some sort of check, what are they there for? They're just there to sign off on whatever the meat industry wants to do. Pathetic, these people, honestly. Singer's intervention carries significant weight because he has spent decades shaping public debate about the moral treatment of animals. His criticism of the AVMA is therefore likely to attract continued attention well beyond the confines of the veterinary profession. Is the AVMA captured by big pork? Here we go. The AVMA has fundamental responsibilities to protect the welfare of farmed animals and to act in the public interest. Institutional capture occurs when organisations with a duty to provide independent professional advice become more closely aligned with the interest they regulate than with the wider public interest. In my view, there could be no clearer example of deep institutional capture than the AVMA's lobbying of Congress to overturn democratically enacted legislation designed to improve the welfare of highly sentient farmed animals. Yeah, I have to agree with this. Like, that is shocking and outrageous from AVMA. Gestation crates confine pregnant pigs in metal cages throughout their 114-day pregnancy, preventing them from even turning around and causing severe, long-duration physical and psychological suffering. Scientific evidence has led to complete bans in the UK, Sweden, Norway and Switzerland, partial restrictions across the European Union and prohibitions in 10 US states. At the same time, meaningful farm animal welfare reform in the United States has largely occurred at state rather than federal level. Proposition 12 and similar state laws therefore represent the most realistic pathways for improving welfare in the US. The AVMA is not simply defending an existing policy, it is lobbying Congress to override pre-existing reforms. For too long, the veterinary profession has been afforded a level of difference, both within the profession itself and by those outside it, that has limited critical scrutiny of its institutional positions. The AVMA's letter to Congress must prompt a reassessment of that deference. When a National Veterinary Association lobbies to overturn democratically enacted animal welfare legislation, the profession's scientific and ethical authority should not be accepted uncritically. Yeah, absolutely. Pete Singer has called on American veterinarians to speak up against the AVMA's misuse of the moral authority of the veterinary profession. That's such a good way of putting it, isn't it? The Animal Welfare Institute has taken an important first step by demanding greater transparency about how the AVMA developed and approved its position, whether its membership was consulted, and what role the National Pork Producers Council played in that process. The AVMA's policy on gestation crates and Proposition 12 is certainly a barrier to farmed animal welfare reforms in the US. However, the AVMA position is not supported by scientific evidence, US public opinion, and almost certainly the wider American veterinary profession itself. And if the AVMA had been aligned with the interests of the pork industry on gestation crates for a quarter of a century, it's unlikely that this is the only aspect of national veterinary policy that deserves much closer scrutiny. For this reason, far greater scrutiny of the AVMA and veterinary institutional policies and practices in general present a substantial opportunity for reform, particularly where veterinary policy positions support and legitimise government policies that cause widespread institutionalised suffering of farmed animals. Ultimately, more rigorous scrutiny by veterinarians, journalists, animal protection organisations and policymakers will be essential to strengthening the independence, transparency and public accountability of the AVMA and national veterinary institutions more broadly. Yeah, very well written by Steve McCulloch. This is really outrageous conduct from AVMA, and I strongly agree with Peter Singer that the head of the AVMA should resign, and possibly the board, if the board was consulted and supported this position. Really disturbing misuse of that moral authority. And this person, Janet Donlin, I hope they spend some time reflecting. You know, have a look in the mirror and realize that you are the bottleneck, the institutional gatekeeper who is able to legitimize continuing to keep pigs in farrowing in gestation crates, and in fact getting them back in gestation crates. Right, there's some legislation that's going to protect some of these sentient animals from being caged for their entire 4-month pregnancy, that activists and advocates have fought for, and now you, Janet Donlin, and possibly the board of the American Veterinary Medical Association are using your scientific and moral authority to get them back in the cages. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful behaviour, really it is. Well, let's have a look at my Vegan 2.0 talk. As I promised I would. This is... Geez, I managed to take 40 minutes doing this. No wonder people started leaving. Let's watch. Cheers. All right. Well, yeah, thank you to the previous two speakers, and thank you everyone for coming to watch us today. Isn't it great to be here where everyone's on the same team? We're all making changes for animals. Good. 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 Let's go. All right. So I'm sure that a lot of us here spend a lot of time thinking about how we can get more people to go vegan. And I want to share with you today an idea that I call Vegan 2.0, which is going to extend our impact for animals and increase our impact for animals, and I'm arguing is much more important than actually being vegan. So this is the definition of vegan as the Vegan Society has it. Vegan is a philosophy and way of life which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation, ... And there's a few key changes that I would propose to this in order to upgrade to Vegan 2.0, and they come in this first section. So whereas with veganism we're talking about excluding as far as practical and possible, in Vegan 2.0 we're talking about preventing as efficiently and effectively as possible. The main difference, of course, is that with excluding, the goal is basically to get to zero. Right, the goal is to, if you exclude everything that you're doing in terms of animal exploitation, if you're the perfect vegan, you approach zero. This is the slide that got me in a bit of trouble with Roger Yates's crew. And, you know, here's my clear explanation of what I am doing with this change in definition, in that if you're talking about excluding, right, versus preventing, it makes sense to be everything as much as you can versus focus on the most effective and efficient things. But yeah, this is the slide that I was photographed with that got me in a bit of trouble with that section of the movement. Impact, right? Actually preventing, we're going the other direction and saying we're actually going to impact more things than just the animal suffering that we're causing directly. Make sure you get one. All right. That was me flexing for the photographer. So, hey, Tristan King, nice to see you. Dude, I've been thinking about you because I fell off hard with the Fast Action Network. I haven't done it in ages. I lost my streak. And I would say, like, basically, well, I don't dread to think how long, but I'm like maybe 10 weeks behind on the points now. So everyone who thought I used to be very happy that you would never catch me up, but I've been slacking, which is not good. It's not good. I need to get back on that. I'll do a little bit of that before I finish stream today. But nice to see you, and yes, happy Beyond Burger Day. I appreciate you. So, you might be enthusiastic about this concept if I would tell you that it would save 2 times more animals. Or perhaps more enthusiastic if I would say it would save 20 times more animals. But actually, we're going to be looking on the order of saving 30 times more animals. But it's actually not, it's 31 and a half. So, this is a central concept in this where we're talking about diminishing returns on additional effort, okay? True, TK. I appreciate that. I do need to get back on it. We've got harm here. You too, Po. Effort here. And early on, when you're making no effort at all, i.e. you're just eating as much meat as you want to, right? You haven't done anything towards going vegan yet. At that point, actually taking a small step, like cutting out chicken only, and that's the only change that you make to your diet, you're actually going to be able to reduce a lot of harm for only a little bit of effort, even if you carry on eating other animal products. As we go down the curve, you've gone vegetarian, you've gone vegan, you get to a point where it's now taking a lot of additional effort to yield a little bit of additional reduction in harm. Right, so you have this kind of diminishing returns on your additional efforts. And a really good example of this is Jain monks. Anyone familiar with Jainism here? Yeah, okay, nice, woke crowd, all right, good, I like it. So as a practice of Jain monks, these guys are holding brooms, right, as well as the robes and everything. They wear light colors so that they can avoid harming any bugs that might land on them. And these guys are holding the brooms. And what they do, they have light-coloured floors in their houses as well for the same reason. They walk around and they sweep the ground in front of them as they walk so that they don't step on any bugs. That's quite... Yeah, I'm actually firing up Fast Action Network on the other tab right now. My Outlook is doing something, but I'm gonna fire off some emails while we're watching this. I invite you guys to do the same. action.themainleague.org. Get up on the other tab. Get the streak back going again. Let me actually just show... yeah, here I am. 0 week streak. Look how upsetting that is. And 574. That I used to be very proud of that number. Now it seems like maybe I'm getting mogged on that by now. Tristan, you kept up. We'll catch up on 574 at all. A high effort. They're mostly vegan as well, by the way. Just they're not doing that and then having Big Macs. But they're sweeping the ground, so there's a lot of effort. They're going to the nth degree. But these guys are actually doing much worse than these guys. This is the next level of Jain monks. They will not only wear the light-coloured robes and do the sweeping the ground, they'll also wear a paper over their mouth to avoid accidentally inhaling bugs. And I think this is a really good example of diminishing returns on additional effort. If you're one of these guys and you're already wearing the light-coloured robes and doing the sweeping the floor and you're vegan, and then your Jain monk pal turns to you and says, you know, you really should be doing the sheet over the mouth thing as well. At some point, there's diminishing returns on additional effort, okay? So you're making a lot more additional effort and you're not really getting that much more harm reduction as a result. And we can think about this in more close to home terms for vegans. I think that we can only approach being the perfect vegan. I don't think that we can ever quite reach it. A couple of common examples that people may have come across in their lives. Medicines with milk powder in them. I'm sure people have encountered this, right? I need to take some medicine. It only seems to be available with milk powder in it. Am I going to not take the medicine that I need? And my doctor's telling me that I need because I want to avoid the milk powder in the medicine. Personally, I would take the medicine. Leather seats in a taxi. If you order an Uber and he turns up and he's got leather seats, are you going to refuse to take the taxi? Again, I would probably just take the taxi, right? Now, you could be a more perfect vegan if you refuse these things. But again, you're going to get to this stage where there's a lot of additional effort and only a little bit of additional harm prevented. So this is the game that we're playing with what I call Vegan 1.0. You can exclude more things, and you get to a point where there's diminishing returns. You're trying to kind of be the ever perfectly more vegan, and yeah, you're getting diminishing returns. So that's why I'm suggesting the shift from a focus on exclusion. Didn't quite land on exclusion or excluding there. I'll say that again for the. That's why we're shifting to a focus on excluding, rather from a focus on excluding to a focus on preventing. Nice that I redid it perfectly, but no one edited it. I mean, that'd be asking a lot. Because then we can escape this dynamic of the diminishing returns on additional effort. So the first thing I want to talk about, there's 3 parts of this: give more, share more, and do more. Okay, these are like the 3 tenets of Vegan 2.0, and I'll talk about each of them in turn and how they make impact for animals. So first of all, with giving more, I think it's useful to think about this in terms of outsourcing jobs or hiring professionals to do something that you wouldn't be able to do as well yourself. Can I just say, I'm doing my Fast Action Network on the other tab right now. I go to this LinkedIn page from somebody who works at Unilever. Top comment is the king. Tristan King's been putting in the work. I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. I wouldn't be surprised if he is mugging me on fast action points now. So good for you, TK.
Right, it's people get a lot of fulfillment from doing vegan advocacy, but it's one of the many things that actually probably professionals who are in organizations with the proper infrastructure and contacts and so on most likely are in a much better position to do a good job of, rather than trying to achieve the same thing yourself. This is actually a room in my house. No, I'm joking, it's not. So this is a graph from Animal Charity Evaluators a few years ago, and it's looking at the number of animals estimated to be spared by the most effective animal charities compared to, in this case, animal shelters. And you can see that there's a massive difference between the two. This is per $1,000 donation. That's, if you give $1,000 to the average animal shelter, you're looking at maybe sparing 7 animals. Still very worth doing, right? But if you're thinking about it in terms of return on your investment, giving to the most effective animal charities, you can be expecting to save more like 4,000 animals for that same $1,000. So that's 579 times more animals helped per dollar donated. So not only giving to charities that can do this stuff professionally, but also making an effort to give to those who are helping animals most efficiently for that money. If you're doing this, you know, in terms of your own donations, if you think about giving £100, this is going to translate into giving the equivalent of £57,942.86 if you're deliberately targeting those most effective charities to give to. So this is really a way to massively amplify the impact of your donations, and you can know that it's extremely good value for money, basically giving to the most effective charities. It's four animals to the dollar, right? You can't say fairer than that. You can't get anything for $1 now, can you? But you can save 4 animals, so that seems bloody good value to me. I'll talk about a few of the charities in this category. First of all, there's the Good Food Institute, who I'm sure people are aware of, promote and support the development of the alternative proteins industry. They do policy advocacy and ecosystem building for plant-based and cultivated meat. So this is very much supporting the animal product alternatives that are being developed, and that is a really crucial part of the shift away from animal products. Next, we have the Dansk Vegetarisk Fooding, the Danish Vegetarian Society. And they are very, very good at...
That is some Chad pronunciation now. I can't believe I nailed that Danish pronunciation live. Come on.
Influencing government. We've seen incredibly progressive things out of the Danish government, which is one of the biggest meat-producing countries in Europe. But they've invested millions into plant-forward food reform, and the Danish Vegetarian Society can take a big chunk of the credit for that investment. They also work with retailers to promote plant-based options. Again, they're focusing at the institutional level. If you can influence a supermarket, it's going to help many more animals than if you can influence one individual. And they've done workshops training dozens of kitchen professionals in plant-based cooking, which is another thing that comes up a lot in these effective animal charities, training chefs and interacting with food service so that they know how to do better plant-based stuff. Last one that I'll talk about in terms of the effective charities is the Humane League. Again, I'm sure many people are familiar with. They have secured thousands of cage-free commitments from corporations. And they also focus a lot on alliance building with other animal organizations to promote pro-animal corporate and government policy. So it's cage-free policies at the corporation level, and then also a lot of commitments and pro-animal policies in the government level as well. I want to linger on this very briefly.
True, Oppenheimer. I've done them a bit dirty there, haven't I? I know you like the Brazilian Vegetarian Society as one of the... They could have gone in for the Danish Vegetarian Society, I suppose, would be the play. Or that's your favourite for demand-side interventions, isn't it? Which I appreciate. But yeah, no, that's an omission.
Because I know that some people are a little bit sceptical of welfarist efforts, and I think it's worth pointing out something that I think is often missed here, right? I do think it's good if the chickens who are on farms are in better living conditions and are suffering less. But I know that some people will take the view, well, they're still ultimately going to be killed, they're still suffering, they're still being trapped and so on, which is true as well, right? And that's valid. But here's something that is kind of...
Thinking about it, it's so gratifying that I'm sharing this talk with you guys now, and I'm for people who have watched me for a little while, I'm pretty sure there's not really going to be anything new here. Obviously, I made this presentation on stream, so it's, for some of you know exactly like what slide's coming next, right? But in general, I'm kind of explaining everything here to this audience who has never come across this idea broadly and may not be familiar with a lot of the sort of more detailed things that I'm talking about as part of it. But it's a really great reflection that I have communicated my beliefs on these things well, that there's not really any surprises in here for you guys who have been watching for a little while. That's really nice from my perspective.
Kind of often missed with the welfarist efforts. Well, so this is a typical supply and demand curve.
You're going, oh, he's doing the bloody supply and demand curves again. Like, that's a good sign. That's a good sign from my perspective.
Price of a thing is very low, then you have a very high quantity demanded. But you have, if the price is high, very low quantity demanded. Yeah, all right, yeah, good. That's the right way around. And where these cross over, you have what's called the equilibrium. So this is like where it sets the price and the quantity provided of any given good. Now, what we're doing with traditional vegan advocacy, we're trying to lower the demand, right? So we're trying to push down this demand curve so that at any given price for chicken, for example, there's going to be a lower quantity demanded than there was before because some people are not in the market for chicken. And the effect of that is to change this equilibrium point, right? The line's going to cross over at a different point now. The price actually goes down a little bit in that instance because you have some people who are now not in the market for chicken. But importantly, this is what we'll worry about, the quantity goes down. Okay, so they're going to have a smaller quantity of chickens being farmed as a result of that. So this is traditional vegan diet change advocacy, right? We're trying to shift that down, that demand curve. When we do corporate reforms and corporate welfare commitments, for example, cage-free commitments, what we're doing is pushing up the supply curve, right? We're saying it's now going to be more expensive to produce a given amount of chicken. You're not allowed to use cages anymore, for example. So producing a given amount of chicken, there's going to be a higher cost to doing that. So it's pushing up the supply curve. Now, again, we're going to change the point where these two curves meet and the equilibrium. So,
pardon me, a little bit of Hellman's ad playing there as I go to comment on YouTube for Fast Action Network. action.thehumaneleague.org. Get back on it, as I am doing right now.
We're going to, in this case, actually increase the price, right? So we're setting some minimum requirement to producing it. And again, we're going to decrease the quantity. So it gets more expensive because you have to meet higher welfare standards, and as a result of that, there are fewer animals farmed. So that's a really important thing that I think bears illustrating like this, is that the point of welfare reforms, yes, I do think it's good that the welfare of those chickens is improved now, but something that's often missed is it is also going to mean that fewer chickens are farmed overall. So that's just a little bit on the welfareism. So there's a few organizations around that have done the...
You know, some really nice ladies came up to me at the conference after I gave this talk and said, you really changed my mind on the welfareism stuff. And that was a really, really nice moment. Because when you're giving a talk like this, you're looking at the audience, especially if you're broaching ideas that you know are a little bit controversial in the audience. And you're kind of thinking, I hope this is going down well. I hope this is reaching people. It's difficult to tell from a room of faces, like, is this being well received or are they kind of fuming? But yeah, I had some people come up to me afterwards and said, you know, that was really, really changed my perspective. So that was really nice.
These evaluations of the best charities and where's the best value for money to give in terms of animal charities. And these ones in particular have done animals per dollar saved, animals saved per dollar estimates. I have aggregated a bunch of these into this lovely spreadsheet and found that the average of a bunch of different sources here comes out about 3.8 animals saved per dollar. So it's actually very close to that animal charity evaluators graph that I put up. 3.8 animals per dollar, again, bloody good value if you're giving to the best, most effective animal charities, right? So that's the give more part, and that is a massive lever that we can use to help far, far more animals than we could by being vegan. So that's the first part of Vegan 2.0. Second part is share more. This is a graph of the sources of influence. This is about 13,000 vegans responded to this survey. And this is what they said was the first thing that made them seriously consider going vegan. About 17% of people said a conversation with a friend or family member. 14% said a video on the internet. And a further 13% said posts on social media. We've also got 4% here saying reading blogs or articles online. So feasibly, close to half of these vegans who were reporting the source of influence that made them go vegan were by socially shared things, right? The social media or conversation or things that they'd seen online. Fully half of vegans in this survey reported that, right? So feasibly, by sharing things, by putting these messages, which is sometimes difficult to look at, in front of people who need to see them, it's feasible that we're doubling the number of vegans by doing that, right? There used to be, and I suppose still is, but to a lesser extent, a lot of fight for control of the printing presses, because this is going to be what is shared with everyone. This is going to be what everyone in the population thinks, and so it's incredibly important for who gets elected and what gets sold.
So congratulations, Poe. Just hit 500 on Fast Action Network. Love that. Well done. I am on the last action that I have in the queue now. And I'm going to finish now on 6:13. What did I have before? 5:07 something. They're not bad for one session. But yeah, it's the consistency, isn't it? It's the same with working out. It's actually kind of easy. I mean, this is easier than working out, let's be real. It's very easy to do, but it's easy not to do. So staying consistent and doing it for a long time is what counts. And shout out again to Tristan King. I mean, that is honestly banging. Like, for those number of weeks that I was just off the radar and was not keeping up with doing what I should be doing here, this guy's at it every day.
And now we all have the ability to publish in the media, right? On social media. And I think this is an incredibly important avenue that we should be using and sharing as much as we can on social media with a pro-animal message.
This is where I decided to not put up the Elon Musk tweet to say that you're the media now.
There's research that shows you should be looking to invoke emotional responses with the things that you share. So sharing things that makes people feel sad, angry, or disgusted about what's going on. Again, people won't necessarily thank you for sharing that in their feeds, but this is going to be the impactful stuff when it comes to getting people to change their diets. And yeah, I want to reiterate a point that Christoph said about sharing the animal suffering images, the factory farm images, the slaughterhouse images. A lot of people can get the idea that you shouldn't do that, it's going to provoke dissonance, it can be, have a backlash and stuff like this. From the evidence that I've seen, there's a bunch of experimental studies which show different messages being compared, and it's pretty consistent that non-human animals are most likely to intend to change their eating habits, right, messages with that. Video about non-human animal cruelty was most likely to report intentions to change. Leaflets focused on non-human animal cruelty were most likely to give their email address to a veg starter guide. A bunch of these, right? An essay, right? This is leaflets again, text messages. Right, there's a bunch of these studies showing this same thing. Well, these are a little bit neither here nor there. But they are consistently showing that basically showing that animal suffering message is effective. So don't be put off from doing that by the idea that maybe there's dissonance or something else going on. I think there is dissonance. And
sorry. We're back up. We're back up and running. 613 points. 1 week streak. We go again. We go again. We all fall off the wagon sometimes, fall off the, I almost said fall off the horse, better not. But yeah, recognizing that and bringing yourself back to what you know you should be doing. There's a lot of power in having a little bit of mindfulness about these things. I left this too long. I wanted to get my 52-week streak this year, but maybe in 2027, hey.
And that's an important part of the process to change. I'm sure that we can all remember a time before going vegan when you felt enough dissonance that eventually made you go vegan, right? I'll speed up a little bit. You can also share Meta Vegan 2.0 content. This is my video about the concept, which has the benefit of lots of editing, and so I can speak much more smoothly than I can live. But sharing the idea of Vegan 2.0 and getting more people to do effective activism, I think that the difference between an effective activist and a vegan is much greater than the difference between a vegan and a meat eater in terms of expected animals helped.
Quite a lot of muscle on me here. I need to get back to this. I've only just got back in the gym as well. That's what I've also fell off the gym, fell off YouTubing, fell off the gym, fell off Fast Action Network. It's not good, but I'm back. I'm back on all of them now.
Right, so inviting those people who are already vegan to do more. Like the things that you see shared by your fellow animal advocates on social media, right? We're all kind of, you know, it's like when you put something out on social media, you're putting something out into the world, a part of yourself, and saying, hopefully I get some approval from this from somewhere, right? Certainly you'll be getting some disapproval from some quarters. So, you know, support people when you see them doing this. Make sure you go out of your way to like pro-animal posts and stuff like that, because that is going to be a predictor of how much that person does pro-animal posts in the future, right? Brief warning here, I do have some Animal Farm images on the next slide, so if you don't want to see that, you can look away now. If all of your posts look like this, you are going to end up in a part of the algorithm where you're only getting shown to fellow vegans who are liking those posts, and you're not really making anything that is going to appeal to the people who most need to see it. So it's advisable to diversify your content a little bit. You might share pictures of your nice vegan food, only if you're good at cooking. I don't do this. Or your pets, and these are things which are kind of still on brand, don't feel inconsistent with other things that you're posting, but it's showing like a more rounded view. You're going to pick up some more likes from the non-vegans, you're going to get into their algorithms more. I have to say this is advice that I could do with taking myself, because I do post like almost exclusively vegan things, which one shouldn't do, right? You should try and have a bit more about you to appeal to the mainstream, basically. So that's share more, and I think, yeah, as we saw, about 50% of vegans were initially influenced by things that they've seen online or conversations with friends and family, so incredibly important to do and to support other vegans doing when you see that happening. Finally, do more. To find this image, I searched for loser ant. And this is you if you're doing things on your own. And this is you if you're.
Well, that is decent, eh? That is decent. We need to get back to this.
Doing things on your own. You need to be doing things in a coordinated way, and then you'll be a winner ant with all your ant friends. The analogy can only go so far, all right. So there's a few platforms that you can do this. There are really good low-effort ways that you can coordinate with other parts of the movement and do things where you can be sure that you're doing, you know, you're one of several people doing it, and that way you'll be able to pick up rocks. So this is the Humane League's Fast Action Network. This is a really, really good site. I've got the URL down here. I'm going to share the slides at the end as well so you can see all of this. Basically, this looks like a feed. You scroll down this and it has different tasks for you to do, and the Humane League has people employed to research and then develop these campaigns and focus on a few very high leverage companies that they're going to ask for changes. And by doing this and sharing it in a way which is very, very easy to interact with at action.thehumaneleague.org, you just click through to these. It's got a comment for you to copy paste and a link to a Facebook post on the Unilever page in this instance. You can click through and do that, and then, right, you're one of several people on this campaign. Submitting contact forms, emailing executives. They're generally all like pretty easy 60-second online actions to do. And they also have a week streak so that you keep motivated to do it and don't want to lose your streak, and also a score. You can see here you get points for each of these so that you can be, competitive with your friends. Who's got more points on the Fast Action Network? That's what I do for fun. It really, I'm not joking.
That's what we're doing right now. I'm talking about us, guys.
Yeah, that's a really nice feature of this website. I haven't seen anything else quite like this, Fast Action Network from the Humane League. Really good platform to make it, again, like very accessible, easy to do this kind of activism, right, in a coordinated way. This is the Raven network from the International Council for Animal Welfare, which is basically a similar thing. It's an email list rather than a platform like this. So you can get actions by email, and one of the really gratifying things about these is when you are part of a campaign and you're doing the posting, and then you find out that that campaign was successful. I've been doing this for about a year, and in that time, Subway has committed to a new cage-free pledge, and also Ahold Delhaize was a recent one committed to a cage-free pledge. And it's really cool when you see that and you go, oh, damn, I remember posting on their Facebook page. Okay, great. So it's really gratifying to be a part of, and you get to see the victories. And by doing this in a coordinated way, this is some of the results that we've seen so far. Okay, we've seen massive increases in the proportion of eggs coming from cage-free systems. This is the US. They've got up to about 35%. In the UK, we got to about 72% of eggs coming from cage-free systems. And now, as you know, the government is most likely going to ban cage-free systems in the UK. So you get to a certain point.
Ban cage systems, I want to say there. Also, this has gone up more since then. It's 83% now, so.
Then it can go into law. And this is from coordinated activism that does rely on lots of ordinary people speaking up in a coordinated way, doing it all together.
Yeah, not banning cage-free systems. You have to use cages. That's the new law. No.
I'm pushing that forward. This is UK Voters for Animals. Again, I got a link to this down here. And they organise political actions in the UK. So this is the Amasa Lobby Day that they organised last October, where a bunch of us, I think there was about 70 or so pro-animal people descending on Parliament on one day, and all organising meetings with our MPs on the same day so that we could lobby for better animal welfare legislation. And this preceded by a couple of months, I won't say cause, but was surely one of the contributing factors, the publication of a really good and ambitious animal welfare strategy for England by the UK government. So an example of how, again, this kind of coordinated action, in this case through UK Voters for Animals, ukvotersforanimals.org, can result in real changes for animals if we're all doing it together. Another shout out as well, this is the last thing on Do More, communities against factory farming. This has been a really impactful thing in the UK, where they're organising basically pushback to local councils with arguments about river pollution and air pollution. It's typically environmental things. But it's very well leveraged, because it is true that factory farms cause problematic pollution for local areas, and that is something that residents care about and that politicians respond to. And again, they have a feed of a bunch of different proposed farms with links where you can log easy objections. And they've been incredibly successful at getting a bunch of different factory farm planning permissions rejected. So this seems like a really high leverage thing to do as well. That's Communities Against Factory Farming. It's caf.org.uk. So those three sources, the Humane League's Fast Action Network, UK Voters for Animals, and Communities Against Factory Farming, I think are really powerful ways. And again, they're all quite low effort, really. They're all like online things that you can do in a couple of minutes. But because it's in a coordinated way, it really does make a big difference for animals. So very quickly then, I'll wrap up, because I know we're coming up on the hour. Some advantages of Vegan 2.0. This is the progression of diets over the last sort of half a decade in the UK. And there actually is a bit of an increase, okay, for animal-free diets. It's like an upward trend here. It's pretty changeable year on year. It's not moving fast enough. And if we want to get to a position where we're post-animal exploitation, oh, I thought it was going to be a different next slide. Never mind. We need this to go to 100%, right? At this rate, that's going to take a long time. So there's some better things that we can do. Here's a graph showing the difference in the number of animals affected by each of these. Okay, so we've got the omnivore consuming on average 146 animals per year. Flexitarian, about half of that, pescatarian, vegetarian, and vegan. Like I say, if you get to be the perfect vegan, you get to 0. Now, if you go beyond that, if you convince somebody else, i.e. by sharing something on social media, to go vegan, there's another 146 animals, okay, per year that they're vegan. Taking part in organised activism, I think I've calculated this based on the donating X minimum wage. If you were doing this for minimum wage and doing an hour a week, you can expect to save another 1,378 animals a year. So this is several times what you would do by being vegan alone. And then donating, in this case I've suggested £50 a month, another 3,081 animals per year. So this is where I'm getting the 31.5 times more animals from. If you're doing all of these things, compared to being vegan alone, you can expect to save 31.5 times more animals. So it's like every day that you're doing this is like a month of being vegan. So that's this, right? This is the difference there. The threshold for mass adoption, as I mentioned, we're going to need that vegan line to go to 100%. But if we get to about 25% of people consistently setting this norm and sharing things and talking to people and making this, right, aggressively spreading this idea on social media, there's experimental evidence that around 25% of people committed to some new norm represents a tipping point where then it catches on quite quickly amongst the broader population. So there's a far lower threshold that we need to actually reach to get to mass adoption. And then we're at about 3% of people being what I call vegan 1.0. But if we look at the things that I've suggested doing as part of vegan 2.0, in the UK already 28% of people give to animal charities. Now largely they're giving to like pet shelters, so they're not giving to the right, most effective animal charities, as we saw. But there is a much higher willingness to give to animal charities than to be vegan, based on what people are currently doing. And the 46% number is, there's actually an American number, of the proportion of people who claim to be involved in some sort of social media activism. Right, so again, much, much higher willingness to take part in the things that I'm suggesting than adopting a vegan diet. And here's some data that we have on that. Right, when we look at activism, people think about frontline activism, your placard holding, out in the streets, giving up your Saturday, and so on. Only about 15% of people said that they'd be willing to do that, compared to 41% of people who said that they'd be willing to give to animal charities, and 39% who said that they would be willing to do some form of social activism, whether it's social media or talking to people that they know. So again, much higher willingness to do these things and much higher impact for animals by doing these things. So to sum it up, this is the main differences I see between activism. We think about very high effort, very in-your-face efforts, which, by the way, I appreciate people who do this. So, you know, I'm not slagging off traditional activists. But the vegan 2.0 is the chill dude on his laptop and just, right, it's all quite low-effort stuff that I've mentioned doing, right? And that's a key part of this. You can be vegan 2.0 very easily, basically. Doesn't require a lot of effort. And I think it's an important switch because when you are vegan 1.0, like I say, if you're doing it perfectly, you get to 0. And you get to these positions where you're trying to sort of tread very carefully through life so that you don't cause any harm to animals, and there's some amount of harm from crop deaths and things like this, and you're kind of, you know, on this view, it's like, ideally, I'd be dead. I mean, I've got to eat something, and I might step on bugs, but ideally, that'd be the best thing, right? That's the kind of ultimate attitude engendered by trying to avoid doing any harm. So it's like if you're trying to be healthy or trying to lose weight, let's say, by obsessively counting calories, and then you discover exercise. Like there's actually something proactively that you can do that's going to push it in the other direction and improve things. So you can go from kind of meekly treading through life and trying not to cause any harm and as much as possible have that's the thing that you're maximizing, to being a philanthropist or an activist, right? These are really important changes.
Hey VPM, good question, and I believe not fully, because so some people raised some criticisms that the numbers I was using were animals affected, which of course is not the same as animals saved. We don't have you know, an animal moved to a cage-free system being the equivalent of actually preventing an animal from being born, let's say. And then I did a recalculation, which was based on a couple of sources that did explicitly say saving. And it was roughly the same, basically. Now, somebody had said, as I recall, that it's possible those sources are using the word saving loosely. But yeah, that's not fully disambiguated. The one thing that I appeal to that gives me a bit of comfort on this point is that Animal Ask blog about mass communication techniques, and they came to a similar number as I was by the welfareism route of about 4 animals per dollar. And so I thought, okay, it's possible that it's a similar rate in the best value case across these different tactics. So yeah, there's still a little bit of uncertainty there, but I do have you'll find a link to the Google sheet where it's hashed out, probably in my Discord.
Changes in important changes for animals, but also important changes in your own mindset and how you approach things. So shifting from vegan 1.0 to vegan 2.0 allows you to take on that much more proactive role and stop apologizing for existing. So join me in going vegan 2.0, give more, share more, and do more. Thank you very much.
I'm glad they cut it out at the end of this. I did an accidental mic drop. Somebody said, "Oh, you did a mic drop." I'm like, yeah, that makes it sound a lot cooler than it was. Really, I put the mic down on the thing there, the pedestal, and clumsily dropped it on the floor. There was Q&A as well, which I guess they don't include in these videos, but there was a few. There's maybe like another 10 minutes worth of Q&A. But there you go. That's my Vegan 2.0 talk, the controversial talk at the Vegan Animal Rights Conference earlier this year. And, you know, I'm pleased that people here are already familiar with these ideas. I think it's worthwhile doing these live talks, but as I mentioned in the talk, you're much more limited in your fluency and punchiness when speaking live than if you have all of the benefits of the time to write and edit and say exactly word for word what you mean to say. But I ran into someone at this conference as well who had seen some of my videos and encouraged me previously, I think in comments and possibly in my Discord, to make a 5-minute explainer version of Vegan 2.0. And they encouraged me again at this conference, and I said, okay, I will do that. And I made that video shortly after getting back from this conference, the Vegan 2.0 in 5 minutes. That's probably the resource that I would recommend to send to people who might be interested in this now. That's the thing I would share this video here. Because, yeah, most people, if you're pitching some new idea, it's going to be, you know, why should I give you a ton of time for something I'm not at all convinced of currently? And that's totally fair. Arguably, I should do an even shorter version as well with like a shorts version, a reels version. So I might do that. Well, check it out. VPM's just gone live. I'm going to link VPM's stream because that is going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We did 3 hours there. And we read a bunch of encouraging stories about alternative proteins. I have a ton more here that we didn't get to, actually, but we'll get to some of this next time. We watched the Vegan 2.0 talk. We even caught up on Fast Action Network, so I'm happy about that. And, of course, we read about the American Veterinary Medical Association betraying animals in their support of Save Our Bacon Act. So hopefully we see some resignations there, because it does look an awful lot like institutional capture of the AVMA. So thank you again for watching, guys. We'll have a lot more good news to go through soon, and I promise that I won't leave it so long next time. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next stream. Cheers.